Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
Your podcast, Billy, no longer belongs to you. It's America's podcast now.
Steve Martin.
Everyone knows that line. Ring, ding, ding. It's
As even more evil Jerry Jones?
yeah. So who is Jerry Jones?
He's the owner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay. Because this character
He's
also...
a sort of hobgoblin-esque figure in the National Football League.
His portrayal, and I have no context for Jerry Jones, obviously, and obviously I'm digging straight into the deep end.
Yeah, right. His portrayal. Uh-huh.
Right. Always felt like it was kind of Ted Turner inspired. But is Jerry Jones that type of guy, or is he combining...
No, yeah, he's doing more of a Ted Turner thing.
In
That's
terms
a
of
good point.
his actual energy and everything, right?
Jerry Jones is more like of a creepy Southerner who's a maniac.
I
Wait.
wish Steve Martin had grown a mustache for this. What?
Guys, I think we're talking the walk
I
2018.
think we're talking the walk 2018.
We're here.
Check.
We made it.
We're talking the walk.
Check.
Here's
Blank.
Let's do the intro, but just the words are all out of order. No, don't
Bounce.
actually do that.
baby.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say this. I need to start right here. I've seen a lot of people talking online about how this is a bad movie, how this is...
Starting with this? Jesus Christ.
No. We are starting with this.
Okay.
If you're tuning in right now and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to listen to this episode.
Oh, sure. You want to hook them.
I'm going to convince you.
I think they may have already swiped delete just the sight of Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, but maybe
This
not.
is what cinema is about. We like blank checks, not because they are guarantees,
Yes.
but because they are blank.
I agree with
And
that.
this is a blank check.
This is beyond a blank check. This is... I just
100%.
was watching it last night and said, this is quietly one of the most insane cultural artifacts of all time.
And
Quietly, because no one talks about it, but we're here talking the walk
And-
2018.
Talking the
And
walk 2018. Sorry,
it's
David.
one of the bigger bounces.
It's one of the
It's
bigger
quite
bounces.
a bounce.
And that's fine. But that's okay.
No, JD, it's not okay.
It's okay as long as we talk the walk.
We're going to
We
talk the
like
walk.
blank checks because sometimes they don't work out, but they're blank, and you go for it.
Hey, JD.
If everything had to be a guarantee, we just get Marvel movies and Star Wars movies.
JD,
You're right.
blank it.
Thank it. I'm JD Amato, and I love movies.
I'm Griffin Newman, and I love movies.
I'm David Sims, and I'm eating a Wendy's spicy chicken sandwich.
God, what a Philistine.
Ding dong.
Oh, if Wendy's sponsored the show, that'd be great. Come on, Wendy's, get aboard.
This, of course, is Blank Check. It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their career and are granted a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they walk very slowly and traumatically, baby.
Mm-hmm. In high definition.
Yes. This
Ultra.
is a miniseries on the films of Ang Lee. It's called Broke Pod Mouthcast, and today we are talking about his most recent film. Yes, this is our season finale, our mini-series finale.
That's true.
Yeah.
Or is it?
And it's called Billy Lynn's Halftime Walk, and it's
Long halftime walk.
Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. Do you still get caught up every time you say the title because you want to say Billy Flynn, like Chicago?
As I believe I've mentioned on this podcast, I literally RSVP'd to the screening invitation, or I emailed someone at Sony being like, it is Sony, right? Yeah, Sony.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see Billy Flynn's. They did not acknowledge my mistake.
It's one of those things.
I also-
Razzle dazzle. This movie's full of razzle dazzle.
I, for a while, mistakenly kept calling it Billy Lynn's Big Halftime Walk.
I mean, that is also true. I had the same thing with Inside Llewyn Davis. I think because of No Country for Old Men, I want to keep calling it Inside Llewellyn Davis.
I see.
You know?
It's like Llewellyn Moss.
When
right?
there's another popular character, I mean, no character is more popular than Billy Flynn. He's on every pizzeria mural,
Pizzeria mural.
every Hollywood
Okay,
souvenir store.
We've lost the thread immediately.
You know those pizzerias with classic murals and the
where
icons
it's
of
like,
cinema?
it's like Frank Sinatra and the
Bogey and
Coliseum.
McCall.
It's the guy
It's
who
always
owns
like when there's a building. you
Yeah.
know?
yeah, it's the guy who owns the shop in front of the Leaning Tower of Pizza.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Next
And
to
I
the
said
Ghostbusters. And they're crossing the
Billy
streets.
Lynn. He's got another movie coming out. It's not like this is Ang Lee's last movie ever.
No,
October 4th, 2019, we will cover Gemini Man.
But that's the point. That's a year from now. That will
That's
be
a while
at
from
that
now.
point.
But this is where his walk ends.
That's where
right
this
now.
mini series ends.
It
where
is.
We check back in with our friend Ang.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of Ang Lee is that he keeps getting chances to make interesting things because sometimes they're groundbreaking and may not manifest into a film that people love or that people
or can stand to watch.
Or that casual viewers take in.
Yeah.
Sometimes he makes these things that are big swings that are Oscar-winning films that sweep the nation.
This is true.
You also go, the films of his that have been commercial breakthroughs are the films that no one could have predicted would be commercial breakthroughs.
100%.
Like Brokeback Mountain making $80 million, Crouching Tiger making 120, Sense and Sensibility making 60. Those are insane numbers that sort of broke the expectations for what those types of movies could do at that time.
All true, but you're not mentioning the biggest one, which sort of
highest grossing is Hulk.
Certainly the biggest one, right? Life of Pi, which
Life of Pi. I'm sorry,
his last movie,
right?
Where if you said on paper like, well, I'm going to make this kind of like CGI tiger, blue screen, epic based on a weird novel
with a lot of religious undertones.
A novel that people thought was unfilmable, that like multiple directors had tried and failed.
And they'd be like, well, maybe it'll be an awards player. And it'd say like, no, smash hit, like genuine smash hit.
Well, and that's the most important piece of context for this movie is that, and I'm sure we'll have covered this in detail on the Life of Pi episode, but the notion that post Life of Pi, Ang Lee is now for the first time seen as one of those filmmakers who breaks technical barriers.
Right.
Yes.
Because he never was. He was always a very classical filmmaker. Even something like Hulk where he was pushing...
Well, but Hulk is kind of...
And people shit on it. He was pushing a lot of stuff at the time, and...
It's just so weird. His filmography is so weird.
So weird.
And to me, I say it's Seamus. Because once Seamus is gone is when he starts running wild.
Right.
But I think
because Taking Woodstock is the last Seamus, right?
Correct.
And I think that's fantastic. And I think there's not that many filmmakers, especially directors, who have that are able to go, not only am I going to pick interesting content or things that are not the beaten path, but also I'm going to try to take these technical leaps. And sometimes they're huge achievements. I think all the times they're huge achievements. Sometimes it captures the fascination of the world at large. Sometimes people have a harder time taking it in.
There's a
but
big three.
He keeps doing it.
There's a big three, and Ang Lee became the surprising, unlikely fourth. But the big three, I would say, are Lucas, Cameron, and Jackson. Are the three guys who have really tried to like push it, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
That's fair. And like created their own technology, you know?
With their butts.
Come on, you're the professional film critic.
What the fuck is this?
This is David Sims of The Atlantic over here.
Two directors we've covered on the podcast. I know that you like.
Well, Cameron, I'm cool with, but like, I mean, Peter Jackson and Georgie Porgy.
Now, are you gonna try to back up?
No, I'm just saying. Well, like Peter Jackson's, his pushing. He's mostly pushed in bad directions. His Hobbits. His high frame rates, all that shit.
I would argue...
Oh boy, here we go. He's going to argue something else now.
I would argue you can't push in a bad direction.
By the way, as if you couldn't tell.
Yeah, J.D. Amato, friend of the
J.D. Amato,
show.
and I love movies.
Thank it.
Yeah.
I've now high-fived two of our three other people in the room.
And also just to give some context...
Griffin's just kind of far away.
David, I think you're in a good mood today.
Yeah, I'm in a good mood.
Not stressed out.
No, not stressed out. Oh.
I hit it immediately.
Now I'm stressed out.
We heard a couple marimba bars.
Last time we recorded, I was in like an extremely stressed out mood.
And then I puked.
And then you puked.
Threw up.
Unrelated. I don't think my stress made you puke.
The poutine.
Yeah, poutine. Oh, yeah. And I know where it was from now. I think I figured it out.
You figured it out. Yeah.
I don't want to rehash this. That was a nightmare. Have you noticed that
JD was so stressed out.
JD
is sitting askew
from Griffin.
Yeah.
As part of sort of my recovery process from that episode.
Yes, correct.
But I'm in a good mood. I don't know, Griffin, how you feeling?
I've been going through some stuff.
Your back's hurting.
Yeah, I was on steroids for a while, which my joke is that they made me really cut and swole. But then I saw JD the other day, and he was like, "You look really skinny." I'm the only person to take steroids and somehow get more emaciated.
I wouldn't say you look really skinny. You look like the same size.
I feel like I look slightly less healthy than I usually do, and that's already a low bar.
But I'll say this.
But I've seen you look unhealthy before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
right,
it
you're
happens
used
to you
to it.
sometimes,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, to me it was not danger zone. It was just like
No, you were like you're on the lower end of the space I know you live in.
I
guys
carried
are
your
skinny.
backpack for you.
JD carried my backpack.
It's
You guys, all right, okay, so here, all right.
Let's do this for 2 cents.
No, I'm going to set the scene for the listeners. We have a lot to discuss.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Billy Lynn's long halftime walk in this episode.
Which I'm so excited about.
2016 war drama.
David has done. JD has done more research for this episode than anyone has ever done for anything ever.
Correct. Before then, though, JD, our good friend, hung out with both of us separately
in the week leading up to
in
this
the week
episode.
leading up to this episode. Was that a coincidence or was that planned? Did
Was
you
that
want
part
that?
I think it was
the
a
prep work
coincidence.
for
Well,
this episode?
here's what I think it was.
I think it is a coincidence. Ours was a coincidence.
Because
it
ours
was booked weeks in advance.
We planned our thing a month in advance.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be Griffin and I hadn't really touched base after both of us were dealing with various.
We were both making TV shows, which no one should ever do, and we were talking to each other during that process about how stressed out we were, and overdue for a hangout catch up.
Yes, and I thought it would have been weird to have our first hangout catch up be.
I think that's a good point.
On podcast talking about Billy Lynn.
Right, because we're good friends, and that's there's a lot of stuff that we've both gone through in terms of wanting to retire to the Andes Mountains.
You're retiring to this studio, my friend.
Okay.
Griffin hates it when I say that.
Look, I can't get by on just a couple high altitude fucks. But we went to see the Happytime Murders, which I will say conclusively on this podcast, we will never do a bonus episode for.
Thank you.
And people calling for that in
Thank
the
you for this
subreddit
promise.
are maniacs.
To be clear, people actually multiple people have asked us for a Happytime Murders bonus episode.
Its own thread and also coming up in other threads.
Right.
Hey, guess
They're
what?
like, when are the guys going to talk about it?
Will never happen.
Now, I want them solved, to be clear. I don't like the Happytime
They're
Murders.
sort of solved, but they don't really make sense.
Oh, okay.
Here's all that I think needs to be said about it. I do not believe it's a blank check film.
It's not, which is the most depressing thing about it.
Sure.
That's the thing that sucks about it the most.
Yeah,
But isn't it one of those sort of like things where you're like, this might have been a blank check at some point, and now it's just this like mess.
I think it definitely
was
was at some
quite a
point.
paycheck movie. It's not quite a blank check.
I was saying I think it's more check than blank.
Yeah, that's what JD said that like 5 times now.
I think
but only once on mic.
Once on mic.
Yeah.
I would equate it to
Blank
he started handing out blank checks to other people in order to get the movie made. He's like, if I give you one blank check, then can I to get other people
movie.
involved?
It cost more than Billy Lynn's long halftime walk.
That's insane.
This isn't Mumbling the Murders 2018. This is Talking the Walk 2018.
Mumbling the Murders.
All right, and then JD and I went to a Big 3 basketball final. The finals. The championships. Which, depressingly, I read got higher TV ratings than any WNBA game ever, which is like truly depressing.
This was Big 3?
Big 3. So it's Ice Cube.
So who was it? It was who? Jordan v. Ewing v. Abdul-Jabbar? Those are the big
you're
3.
actually not far off.
Really? George Mirzan.
Because
he's a little far off.
Manute Bol. Who are the biggest 3 basketball players?
Manute Bol is dead, sadly.
Fuck. Is George Mirzan still alive?
Yes, he is.
That's a good poll, right?
Yeah. You're just sort of now you're naming like the famously like ridiculously tall basketball.
Those are the only basketball players.
He's naming basketball players that are in movies. Which is why he would know that.
Applies to both.
But George Mirzan and Manute Bol are the 2 like 7'7" guys, like the tallest men who ever played.
For me to take note of an athlete, they had to be abnormally large and be in talkies.
Yeah.
Here's what the Big 3 is.
Shaq was my favorite movie star for a while. Yeah.
Big 3 is a league that Ice Cube created. That is when NBA.
Wait, seriously?
Yes. When NBA players retire, they can join the Big 3, which is all retired players. So we watched a game where
Why is it called the Big 3?
Because it's 3-on-3 basketball, not 5-on-5. So it's played like half court. You know, it's like it's kind of like street ball. You know,
they're only on one side of the court.
Well, the court is only one side.
So what happens on that other side of the court?
There's
is it just
more
taped
seats.
off? More seats.
Yeah. You're into this.
Wait, so who is in the game?
All right, so we were seeing the championship.
Ice Cube create? This is a real blank check.
Not only did Ice Cube create it,
this is a blank check, right?
The game with a concert. Like Ice Cube comes on to there's a stage when you arrive, right, JD?
Yes.
And
this is a blank check. This is him using all his cachet from his success in different mediums, right?
Yeah, sure. And we sit down and we're like, "What's with the stage?" And someone in front of us is like, "Ice Cube's going to perform," and I was like, Well, all right then, Ice Cube. The sound was terrible.
Well, because here's the thing: is it's not a huge budget league.
Right.
It's in the Barclays Center. We're in the Barclays Center.
Okay.
I was sitting as close as we were sitting for Taruk.
He kept.
Yes. I mentioned it.
He kept referencing Taruk, the final flight or whatever it's
He'd
called.
nudge you and go, that's where the
Yes, he did
flew
that.
down.
He literally did
Pretty
that.
much.
Ekron was right there.
Pretty much.
He actually did that.
You tired there?
No, I shouldn't even talk about it.
Ennui?
No, it's just I'm sorry. I had like a disappointing career setback this week.
What happened?
I lost the best of online betting category in Good Housekeeping.
I knew you were really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You didn't get the trophy?
Look, I'll admit, the competition's been pretty light. No one's really been innovating the space, and I thought I could get this one in a walk.
Because, sheets, they're always marked up. Most betting is marked up like 300%.
It's a scam.
So
I got some dirty rags. I wrote my name on them, and I thought it would win.
Griff Linens.
Griff Linens. But then here comes Brooklinen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here's our strategy. Let's make a really good product.
Oh, you mean the fastest growing betting brand in the world with 20,000 five-star reviews?
Let's do something that's respected by everyone. They like using it. And I'm like, okay, fine. I guess that's a way to go.
So, yeah, instead of your strategy, which was basically just trying to win by default,
right?
Brooklinen actually makes like fancy hotel sheet level sheets for like the average consumer.
Right. I was like, hey, do you want to like sleep in a way that feels like you're taking a nap under a bridge during a rainstorm? And then everyone else is like, no, we'd rather like feel like, fancy hotel sheets. We like the idea of a husband and a wife who love each other and love linens and are making this product together rather than just a sad mid-level actor.
And also they have a cool dog called Dukes.
Yeah, and I don't have
they've got this small business approach. It's a husband and wife team, so they're involved in every step of the manufacturing process, of the customer service process. They remember their customers by name, and they take out the middlemen, so they keep things personal. That's why it's like so affordable.
And for me, this is also very personal because they live in the city that never sleeps, New York City, and so I feel like I'm no longer the hometown golden boy.
Yeah, I mean, you did not deserve to win.
I didn't.
I have Brooklinen sheets. They're very good. And then you gave me your sheets, and I had to burn them in the backyard. Yeah. And like a ghost came out of them.
Right. And I gave you a promo code, and the promo code ended up costing you more money.
Right. Yeah. It added a new loan to my,
Right.
But with Brooklinen, which I've got Brooklinen sheets, you've got Brooklinen sheets.
Yeah.
We're a couple of Brooklinen babies.
Yeah, I don't want to admit, but I've defected over it.
They're the best, most comfortable sheets. They really are. And we have an exclusive offer for Blank Check listeners. You can get $20 off and free shipping.
What?
When you use the promo code CHECK at brooklinen.com.
My shipping was $200.
Brooklinen is so sure you're going to love the sheets. They offer a risk-free 60-night satisfaction guarantee and a lifetime warranty on all their sheets and comforters. The only way to get $20 off and free shipping is you use promo code CHECK at brooklinen.com. That's BROOKLINEN.com, promo code CHECK.
That's nice, too, because my sheets were high risk. It's nice of them to offer a risk-free guarantee that there won't be any oils
your sheets
or
are high
flammables.
risk.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I have like these wet, dirty sheets all over the studio.
Well, now you know who I sold my
Don't
remaining
put those
supply
near an open
to.
flame because you'll go up with them.
Damn.
Get some Brooklinens. Promo code CHECK.
Did he show you where Ben sniffed out the fart?
No, but I did walk by it and
people
think
might not
about it.
know that our producer Ben was a fart detective that night at the
He was a
Barclays
fart
Center.
detective. He detected a fart.
Poet laureate, Meatloaf.
He was an old person, and I just could tell by
Producer Ben Deucer,
the like
Producer
stank. That was like an
Peeper.
old person.
Served by
fart.
Benny. Took him up Benny Wet Hat Benny.
We haven't had the names in a while. Do the names.
Wish him a hello, Fennel.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, Fennel.
He's not Professor Crispy.
No.
He is a fuckmaster.
Well, let's not go there.
He's graduated certain titles over the course of different miniseries, such as Kylo Ben, Producer Ben Kenobi, Ben Night Shyamalan, Ben Say Bennything, ... Ailey Benz with $, Warhaz,
Correct.
Purdue Bane, Ben 19 the Fennel Maker, Benglish,
Sure.
Mr. Ben Credible,
What's the Verhoeven one?
Robohaz,
Robohaz, right.
and now
Do you have an Ang Lee one?
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
I've been seeing what people have been suggesting,
Yeah,
and
there've
there's a
been some
I
clear
saw one that I really liked. I'm curious if you chose it.
Eat, Drink, Ben Hosler.
That's the one that I saw that I loved.
Fair enough. I remember there being one other that I liked, but I can't remember what it was. It doesn't matter.
All right, so who did you see at the Big 3,
All right,
guys?
so the Big Three. Well, we
really
saw
cool.
Ice Cube, LL Cool J as well.
LL
Is he financially involved, or was he just there to hang out?
I don't know. At one
He bought a
point,
ticket. I mean, he was financially involved in that sense.
can I just paint the
I think
picture?
he was just hanging out.
Also, I pointed out there, LL Cool J is an interesting person. Has been in both Deep Blue Sea and Toys.
Yeah.
Or two of
What
your
a
faves.
Yeah, this guy's in good movies.
At
Toys,
one
which
point-
if we ever did a JD's choice where you could pick any movie you
I'd
want,
love
it would
to
be
talk about
Toys.
Yes.
There was one point at
Oh
which
my God,
Ice
I have
Cube
so
was
much to say about
performing. We couldn't really hear him because the acoustics were horrible. Because it was set up for basketball, not
Right.
for an Ice Cube
Right.
concert.
And performing in the round in Barclays without proper sound design.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
going to go well.
And LL Cool J has walked to the stage. Like he's right there. No one else is doing this. He has 2 cell phones, one in each hand. And he's filming Ice Cube with both cell phones. I was like, is it like a Sonic and Knuckles thing where like if you put them together, it's better?
So that's Sonic and Knuckles thing.
They were like, imagine if you're holding 2 phones next to each other and filming something. You would just get the same video twice.
I know,
He's doing a story on Snap, and he's doing a story on Insta.
It's possible.
Come on.
That is very possible.
I bet that's what he was doing.
O'Shea Jackson Jr. was also there.
Oh, he's good.
He is.
I know we have like 4.5 hours
He
of
got
Billy
like
Lynn
dapped
talk,
up by Amari Stoudemire.
and I don't want to keep on sidebarring here.
Mm-hmm.
But just because this is we're now in the zone again of doing episodes within a month of their release.
Yeah.
Rob Letterman, director of Detective Pikachu, upcoming episode on this show.
It's essential. We
David's
have to
most
do it.
anticipated movie of all time, Detective Pikachu.
Yeah.
I love detective movies. I love Pikachu.
Yes.
I have to see
I'm
this
hoping
movie.
Detective Pikachu is what Happytime Murders should have been. Just a hard-boiled noir.
Pretty sure it won't.
A bare-knuckle noir. But he in an interview said that the Pokemon are going to be photorealistic, that they're making them look like actual animals.
Oh, dear God.
Pokemon are not real animals.
They're not.
fake.
But it sounds like the design aesthetic for this movie is to make them look like real animals
It sounds
existing in our world.
horrible.
So my question now, moving laterally because of the thing you just said, because I've been debating this as well, is that the approach they're going to take with the fucking Sonic the Hedgehog movie?
Maybe.
Because
Just a weird
Because
Sonic
it's
that has
only
stubble and
cartoons.
wrinkles.
Right.
Right.
But like, is Sonic the Hedgehog going to be like Knuckles and Tails and Sonic all looking like roadside creatures? Or is it going to be like the Smurfs where it's just like, what the fuck is this thing? This doesn't exist in our universe.
I don't know.
Because
Hopefully it's like the Polar Express.
the
I
premise...
mean, Sonic doesn't
Hopefully it
look
lives
like
in
a
the Uncanny
hedgehog.
Valley.
No.
Sonic is a creature, and then he has some like sort of cool spikes, and that's
Right.
like him. He's
But he
quote,
doesn't
unquote,
look like a hedgehog.
hedgehog.
He's the wrong color for a hedgehog. But the premise of the movie is James Marsden plays like a traffic cop, like a roadside like speeding cop.
That's the premise. Of
That's not the
Sonic
premise, but that's
Hedgehog?
the human step. Is that's how he meets Sonic. So you have to imagine in a real world environment, he's there with his speeding gun, and this blue thing flashes by, and I wonder, is it just going to be a CGI creature with like red sneakers and the cool hair, or are they going to make a photorealistic blue hedgehog who's like, hey man,
Jesus Christ.
My pitch, if you make a movie based on a video game,
Mhm.
John Leguizamo must be the star of it.
I mean, he'd be a great Sonic.
No, it's Ben Schwartz.
He
is the
would have
Sonic.
been a
Well,
great
all right,
Sonic.
fine. I mean, Jim Carrey is playing Dr. Robotnik.
I'm
We
playing
all know
Knuckles. I
this.
should mention that. I buried the lead a little. I'm playing Knuckles. Ben's playing Tails.
Tails is my favorite.
JD's playing Big the Cat.
I'm playing
Buzzy the Bee.
Dr.
Sure.
Robotnik.
yeah. No, Jim
no,
Carrey
that's
is
Jim
playing
Carrey.
Dr.
Jim Carrey.
Robotnik.
Which, I mean,
Fuck.
do you think...
I'm playing the owner of the Casino Night Zone. I don't know.
Do you think that Jim Broadbent's agent has just been banging his head against the wall for 6 straight weeks on the fact they missed Robotnik?
But do you think Robin was like, oh no, like I won't, Robotnik. I wish I could do him now. Robotnik.
But that even sounds like Dr. Robotnik. Right? Like, that's how I imagine Dr. Robotnik should talk.
What's his deal? Doctor, he wants to turn the animals into robots. That's his
He
thing.
the Eggman.
This is
He's the
David's
Eggman.
observational stand-up comedy. What's the deal with Dr. Robotnik? Can he walk or does he have to be in a spaceship? It's not clear.
It's so weird.
What's he have against these animals?
Old video games are so weird. Now they try and like have them, make sense.
Right.
Like there's a little more thought
Yeah.
into and so like Mario, it's just like, oh, the dinosaur kidnapped a lady. Why? I mean, he kidnapped her.
Yeah.
Why'd he do it? he just did. He's,
What if they announced
Dr.
that?
Robotnik, he's a doctor, he makes robots, and the hedgehog doesn't like him. No, doesn't like him at all.
Well, so much of like video game, like quote unquote plot lines were dictated by like, okay, so what can we do in technology?
Right. Could we actually visually render?
Right.
Like
the designs,
robots.
right, came first. What if Indiana Jones?
This is our Billy Lynn podcast.
No, come on.
No, you're right. Let's talk the walk. Let's talk the walk.
No,
2018.
well, I just want to tell you that we saw the Power win the Big 3 Championship.
Who's the Power?
That's the name of the team. Now, here's the
Who's
weirdest
on the
part.
team?
We got, Big Baby Davis is sort of their star.
Birdman.
Glenn
What?
Davis. These are kind of like NBA veterans, like not quite stars.
That's not true. One of these won Best Picture.
One of these won Best Picture?
Yeah, Birdman.
That's true, Birdman. Yeah, Chris Anderson. Yeah,
he won Best Picture.
If he had won Best Picture, I'd have been happier with that choice.
But the real game of the night, I don't know, Blankies right now are screaming because I'm going to get into the most...
the final was a little boring.
I'm going to get into the most film nerd thing you've ever had in this podcast.
Yeah, he's going to do it, guys.
Let us
Don't
revel
worry.
in the Big 3 for just a moment.
Yeah.
The game of the night,
Who's
though...
the third guy on the team?
On Power?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, they have 6 guys per team, but Quentin Richardson, that was the third big guy.
Catino Mobley?
Catino Mobley was on that team. Corey Maggette.
Right.
Corey Maggette.
Never even heard of these guys. I'm the biggest basket nut in the world.
Are you?
You're such a basket nut.
The weirdest part is that their opponent was called Three's Company. Most of the teams have a 3 pun in their name.
Because
it's
Thomas
Big 3.
Suzanne Summers is on the team.
And their logo,
Norman Fell.
They're called Three's Company. Their
Yeah.
logo is a factory. I don't know why.
Because it's a company. It should have been
I
corporate
guess.
offices more, right?
But it's so weird.
Yeah. Okay. Who's on the team?
But the game of the night. You're not going to
Dante Jones.
Yeah, you're going to know anyone
Drew
on Three's
Gooden.
Company.
What? None of them were in Space Jam.
I'm trying to think.
This is disgusting.
The only-
I know all 10 basketball players who have been in movies since
Nate Robinson.
1991.
Nate Robinson was there at the Big 3 game.
What was Nate Robinson's one?
He's in Uncle Drew. He plays the guy in the wheelchair.
I saw this.
Also, well, we don't need to go into that. I was going to say,
What?
what's Laura Dern?
Baron Davis.
Baron Davis.
Yeah.
Is this who
Dern's
Laura
boyfriend.
Dern's dating?
Yeah.
Oh, baby.
But anyways, the game of the night was the battle for third place.
Right, the third place playoff between the 3-headed monsters and Tri-State.
Tri-State.
It really just failed them reach of being like, what's another 3 thing? Tri-State? Okay.
But it was so much fun, and the game-winning shot was had by Mahmoud Abdul Rauf,
Yes.
who was previously known as Chris Jackson NBA.
Yes.
He is currently 50 years old
Wow.
and is still lighting guys up. It was
This
so
is
much
true.
fun.
Yes. It was awesome. He has gray hair. It is crazy. It was cool. JD and I hung out.
Yeah.
We saw the Big 3 Championship. We saw Ice Cube perform.
We saw Happytime Murders, which was really good in terms of like breathing exercises because we were sighing constantly.
Yeah.
Our oxygen intake was like very regulated throughout the movie.
It was very much like David and I, our friendship, we'd go and see a Big 3 game, retired NBA players. Our friendship is we'd go and see Happytime Murders.
No,
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I
Billy-
think our friendship is also that we go see Happytime Murders, but
Yes.
we'd probably go see something else.
Yeah, but I'll say there is, and it's not exclusively, but the majority of the movies that you and I have seen together are movies where it's like, we need to see this together so that we can have the very specific, incredibly long discussion afterwards.
Yeah. Monokamina.
Right. And Billy Lynn falls into this.
Yes.
Where we were overdue to like hang out and see a movie. And I said, do you want to see Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk? And you said, I don't know what that is. Tell me what it is. And I told you about the technology and you were like, that sounds weird. And I was like, yeah, Ang Lee. And you were like, wait, Ang Lee directed this? Which speaks to how much this movie was kind of like ignored and shrugged off.
100%.
And I said to you, he's broken all these technological barriers. The movie's gotten trashed. They only set up 5 screens, like not even 5 theaters, but there were 5 screens in the entire planet
Yes.
that were capable of projecting the movie in the way he intended. And at the point that I suggested we go see it, it was down to 2.
Yes. And it was
Now the only
The
screen
5
in North America that was
There
playing.
was only ever one screen. Oh, no, there were 2.
LA was playing it for a
Because
week.
the
ArcLight
ArcLight
had it.
Hollywood
Right.
and AMC Lincoln Square could
Right,
handle
which
it.
is where we saw it.
There's
And on
also-
a smaller screen at the Lincoln Square.
And then there were
Yes.
also...
Well, you can't do this on a big screen.
Yeah.
In fact, they have to get rid of the first like 5 rows of the theater because the technology doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get so into it. What were you gonna say?
Also screens in Taipei, Beijing, and Shanghai.
Yes.
Those are the 5 places on Earth
It
you can
only
see this
played
movie
in 2 continents.
projected in 120 frames per second.
Yes, and I know that I'm going to sound like a one-trick pony with what I appreciate in films, but something that I want to set the stage for what I think is amazing about this film is we sat down in that theater.
Mm-hmm.
It was half full, maybe.
Yeah, we saw like a Sunday night 10 p.m. showing or something weird like that.
But still, there wasn't many people in it.
Yeah.
The moment the first shot of this movie came on screen, the reaction of the audience was
patented JD explains a theater reaction.
Yeah.
But this is what it's about.
Okay, it was what?
Shot comes on.
Yeah.
Oh.
People have reactions like, oof. And then there's giggles.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And light applause.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because people are like, what am
What's
I
going on
experiencing
here?
with my eyes
What's
right
the
now?
first shot of the movie, too?
First shot.
Him reaching to grab his cell phone from his nightstand table.
It's a nightstand.
Which is like 3D, 120 frames per second was the most aggressive thing we'd ever seen. Like it felt like having your personal space violated. I'll say this too: the makeup JD literally has 4 pages of typed notes stapled together with also handwritten addendums on it.
So there's one quote that I want to start with from Sony released this like 40-page PDF.
I just want to say this one thing before you get to the quote, because the other thing I found interesting about the makeup of our theater we saw it in, and David, you saw it at the New York Film Festival.
I saw it at the New York
night,
Film Festival.
Where they
opened the New York Film Festival. I saw it at a press screening, not at like the premiere.
Right, attempting to project it in the perfect format, and it was a little bit off. You still saw it more.
It certainly
closer
looked
to his
crazy to
vision.
me. Yeah,
But it is this insane thing as we're talking about this movie is like very few people in the world got to ever see it the way he intended. And on home video, it will never be replicated in the same way.
No.
It was released a month later, and I saw it again at the Sony screening room in
2D.
regular.
Because I remember you saw him where
Like a
it told me
smaller
like
screen.
it's not very good. And I said, is there any chance the technology is so distracting that you didn't realize the movie was great? Because I so badly wanted this movie to be great.
Right. Well, you were all in on the Vin Diesel of it all.
And the Steve Martin of it all.
Sure.
If you go like Griffin, like pick your 3 actors you want to be rehabilitated by Ang Lee.
Sure.
Reclaimed as serious like character actors. It was Steve Martin, Vin Diesel, and I even feel Kristen Stewart's reputation was less sterling than it is now. She was at the beginning of her sort of reclamation project. But I was amped by it. I thought it was like a great story for a movie. I got excited when I read the synopsis and all of that. But the theater we saw it in, I think the makeup seemed to be, half full, half like Chinese college students.
Yes.
Which you realize like, oh, he really is sort of an important cultural figure.
Yeah.
As just like the most prominent, Asian American artist.
Yep.
In this medium at the very least.
This movie made almost all of its money in China.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a lot of like native Chinese speaking college students or 20 somethings.
Yep.
And then the other half of the theater was like people who worked in film.
Yes,
like I recognized a lot of people like, oh, wasn't that guy like a sound guy on like a college humor shoot I did 5 years ago? Like packed together people who were just talking about on-set experiences. Because I was eavesdropping, and that was the whole makeup was just like Chinese college students who were like, this guy's important, we have to support him. And film crew people who were like, I need to see what the fuck this is.
Just to break it down, this movie made $23.7 million in China.
Insane.
$3.2 million in Taiwan and $1.7 million in the United States.
And was released wide here.
It was.
Was a
not super
$40
wide,
million
but wide.
project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is that after I saw it, I think I went on a tirade of just any person that was a film fanatic.
Yes.
I was like,
check it out.
You have to
great.
just
You
go.
made at least
You
10
have-
people go see it because people would come back to me and be like,
Here's-
so JD made me
Here's
see
my
Billy
question.
Lynn.
Will anyone ever see it in that again?
I have.
Because it's such an ignored movie. Like, when, I guess maybe one day, but like, who's going to go to the fucking effort of setting up the projection?
That's the thing, because you even go like, okay, let's say like the Museum of Moving Image,
right, but they
wanted
can't
to do right.
Maybe one day they'll be able to. I don't.
But it's literally like you would convert your entire theater for one movie.
Right.
It's not worth the conversion cost.
Right.
Yes. So I believe. So here's what the context of all the stuff that I want to talk about is that this film uses technology. So basically, I don't think we've said it yet. It's 120 frames per second.
Correct.
Right.
4K stereoscopic. So it's 3D.
Right.
Okay, which
films are usually shot in 24 frames per
I'm going to
second.
get all into it.
I know you are.
Yeah,
but like here's the pitch that I
and
always
just to
say.
state
Sure,
this
people
very
mostly know
cleanly,
that, but-
24 is what people are used to. Peter Jackson released the first Hobbit in 48, and people went, "Fuck this
It looks
too
like
much."
That's what I
Garbage.
always say. I go. When he released The Hobbit in 48 frames, people were like, "This is crazy." This is 120 frames.
Ang Lee went 2.5 times more than what Peter Jackson had done, which was 2 times more than what we were used to, and people hated that.
And he did it for a movie that's mostly just set in the bleachers at a stadium.
A drama about a
You watched this
traumatized
movie,
guy
Ben?
who's introverted.
No.
Yeah.
Ben's been
I
going
think
through
that's
his-
okay.
going through a lot.
Here's what I want to
Ben's
say.
been going through his own halftime walk.
Yes, but
I won't get
We're
into
not
it
even
more.
at halftime yet.
Yeah.
I think.
here's
He
what
might
I
be
want to
first
say though.
quarter.
I think it's okay to not watch this movie unless you're able to see it in 120 frames per second, 4K 3D.
Now, what if you can watch like the 4K disc?
I think no.
Okay.
Wow.
So
I think no.
I got the combo pack, which is
I got the combo back. I paid like $20 for this.
I got it on sale.
I know. What?
I got it on sale. I've been watching the prices. I've been riding the prices for months
I was
because I knew we
hoping
were
it
getting
would
to
be
this
on
episode.
riding the because that's one of those things where Amazon's like, you want that? You're gonna have to pay. Like no one wants that.
No,
you know what I mean? Like it's not like
Amazon did a sale where it was like if you bought 3 4K UHD movies, they were each like $15.
Still a lot though.
Yeah, but I got Furious 7 and King Kong.
King Kong.
I love King Kong, baby.
the Jackson
yeah,
King
get
Kong.
ready for that app.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good app.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a good app. Maybe
Which,
I'll turn
which
around
isn't
in that
me
movie.
saying that we have this on the books,
No,
but I'm
but
saying
like
this is
whenever
why I'm
we do
constantly
it,
pushing
whenever
David to
we
do
do it.
Jackson.
No. I mean, to me, that watch out for the Hobbit, the third Hobbit app, because
Right.
that's when David's gonna. I'm locked and loaded for that one, baby. That movie's good.
Yeah. See, this is why we got to do Jackson, because it's the combination of every type of miniseries we've done so far. It
I
goes
know.
into the
We'll do
chaos
him one
of the
day.
Star
we'll
Wars.
do him one day.
Yeah.
As a
Hobbit
personality,
3
he's-
will be your Matrix Reloaded.
My problem with him is it's not that good, but yeah, as a personality, Jackson's not that interesting. He's like a sort of an avuncular guy. You know what I mean?
Sure, but I mean, his career starts out with what is clearly now the first best puppet fucking movie of all time. Definitively.
I grew up in the horror movie section
Yeah.
of my local video store, Video Adventure, and boy, oh boy, did we love Peter Jackson back in the day before he was the Peter Jackson of now.
Yes.
And he was known for making the
weirdest, most transgressive.
Dead Alive
right.
is the goriest, most
movie's
violent
fucked up.
film
Yes.
of all time.
Quite funny though.
I mean, hilarious and bizarre. And when you're, 12 and you want to have jaw-dropping, insane gore, it's interesting. I don't think I could sit through it now just as an adult, but boy, oh boy, is that movie wild.
Just to say this, though, because presuming that Blankies have watched this movie in preparation for this episode,
Yeah.
the ways it is available to watch now are on this combo pack, 4K, UHD, 60 frames per second. So you're still only getting half of what you saw in theater, but it's closer to the experience of what the high frame rate looks like.
It looks
That's
weird,
2D.
Yeah.
Then there is a normal frame rate, 1080p, 3D Blu-ray.
which is what you watched,
which
right?
is what I watched in preparation for this. And then there is just the standard high def 2K 24 frames per second, which if you're watching it on any streaming platform, if you're buying it, if you're renting it, that's probably what you're seeing.
Okay, so I
Or
have a
there's the
question.
Ben experience,
And I
which
it
is
might
not
be
watching
setting
it.
you up.
Yes.
Might be the
if
best
it's
way to
too
watch
soon,
this
but I don't know what anything you just said means.
Oh boy, am I going to get
literally,
into
I
it?
have no idea what any of that
Ben,
is.
So here's what's going to happen.
You just
in this episode.
invited a vampire inside your home.
Here we go. I'm so jazzed. Here's what's going to happen.
my
Come right
friend,
in, Lord Dracula.
I love talking about movies so much. Like
Hey.
this stuff gets me so jazzed.
Blanket.
Thank it. I want to talk about how cameras work, and I want to explain the brass tacks of it, because there's a lot of people, like myself, even coming through film school, where you understand the ideas of it, but there's certain words and phrases that are thrown around, and you sort of feel embarrassed to admit you don't know what they are. And sometimes when you look that stuff up, it's sort of circular because it all leans on each other. So what I want to do is I want to explain how cameras work, and I want you guys to sort of be the audience surrogates to
Sure.
keep me to making it understandable.
You're saying
And-
it's the thing where you know how to use a word, but you don't know how to define it.
Yes,
Right.
or it's the kind of thing that there might be one word that you don't know. And I might be saying this and people listening will be like, I know all of this, but just let's refresh ourselves, because when we get into the technology of it, what they did was so advanced that you need to have this base knowledge to really understand it.
Cool.
And I promise there's no aspect of that that's just like, I just want to ramble with this stuff. I think this is legitimately important.
Talk about it.
So first I want to start with, so Sony released this 40-page PDF, which is fascinating to read, about the making of Billy Lynn. There's two amazing quotes in the whole thing because Ang Lee and John Toll, John Toll's cinematographer that did this, from the get-go.
One of the best living cinematographers.
Famous Oscar-winning, two-time, back-to-back, actually, Oscar-winning.
What, he went for Braveheart?
Braveheart is the second.
And what was the first one?
Legends of the Fall, a gorgeous movie.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Not a good movie, but a gorgeous movie.
But Shot Thin Red Line, which is one of those beautiful looking
Thin
movies
Red Line, which is an incredible looking movie.
Shot Tropic Thunder, because Ben Stiller wanted Tropic Thunder to look like Thin Red Line.
He has a weird career because it's Tropic Thunder, but like Gone Baby Gone. Like I feel like people often hire him when they're like, like a Ben Affleck, where he's like, I know you're a good cinematographer, so just make my first movie look beautiful. He shot Cloud Atlas.
Right.
He shot Iron Man 3.
Right.
He shot Jupiter Ascending. And what's the most important movie that he ever shot? Actually, no, there's two. One we've already covered and one we're about to.
One we've already covered, one we're about to.
One of them is my least favorite film we've ever covered.
Elizabethtown?
Correct. And one we are about to cover.
Did he shoot in Nancy?
He did. We're about to cover it.
Not The Parent Trap.
We're about to cover it.
It's complicated?
Correct.
You're talking the actual timeline of when we're recording. Sure.
And John Toll had no experience shooting 3D before this.
That's interesting.
He shot digital before, right?
Yes. And
because like Iron Man 3, I'm sure that was digital, like things like that.
And so anyways, there's this 40-page PDF that's about the making of this whole thing that is fascinating to read. And it gets so deep into the technical side of things. But there's these two quotes in it that I think are fascinating.
Right, because his other 3D movies were all post-converted.
Yes.
He wasn't involved at all on set in terms of thinking stereoscopically.
Yes. And I'm trying to think of, was Cloud at were
Jupiter Ascending and Iron Man 3 both were like post-converted.
Yes, I don't think any of them were shot stereoscopically, which I'll explain why that's such a crazy process. But there's two quotes that I think are apropos to this whole thing. Number one, rather than try to make digital look like the last 100 years of film, why don't we start exploring and try to find the aesthetic and look of the digital age? And then in trying to describe the look and feel of this, he says, there's no need to discuss it. It can't be described in words. It's not a verbal experience. You can see it, whether you like it or not. It functions at a different level than movies you're used to seeing. And that's something I want to say.
That's true.
Is true.
Empirically true.
We're going to try to explain it here. It's going to be almost impossible for you to truly understand what it's like. Because
it's going to be like us telling you like a ghost story.
Because truly,
it's hard to believe if you haven't seen it yourself.
They would have these meetings while they shot the film where they would shoot dailies. Also, they couldn't even screen the dailies at 120 frames per second.
Sure.
Which I'll explain what all that means in a second. They had to do it at 60 frames a second. And all the heads of departments would sit there and watch it. And then Ang Lee described that like you'd literally see like their faces sink because they would be like, this is changing the entire language of film. And what we know about our jobs doesn't make sense anymore. And we have to relearn it. So like both Ang Lee and John Toll are like, it was like going back to film school. The language of film totally changed. And we were out there trying to figure out how this worked. And they even admit some of the stuff was not successful or some of the stuff was out of their control. And boy, oh boy, was an interesting thing. But they had to learn on the fly how to do all this stuff.
That's the most interesting thing about this movie is you see guys rewriting the language of filmmaking in a way that kind of fucks with every other aspect of filmmaking that had been perfected up until that point.
And the experience
it makes performances worse. It makes costumes worse. Well, they couldn't use makeup.
It doesn't make makeup. I'd argue it doesn't make them worse as much as it shows them for what they truly are.
Sure.
We'll talk about it.
Which is, yes.
But also, here are some questions I have from what I vaguely remember. Like, the camera's very large, right?
Yes.
It makes a lot of noise, right?
Yes.
So you can't hear what you're saying.
Well,
actors like struggled to hear what they were saying. And you can't do a lot of takes because you just like
so they did like
use up film really
3
fast,
takes most.
Right?
Well, no, it's so difficult with the lighting and the focus and everything to do multiple takes. Right?
I remember hearing that these were hindrances in the filmmaking process.
100%. And I want to address all of those. Here, Ben, I'm going to give you this first. Just hold on to this for a second.
What the fuck is going on? He just handed Ben an envelope.
Just hold on.
But let me just say, for anyone who hasn't watched the movie and is just listening to this episode because they're a JD fan, right?
Sure.
And they know what this episode's going to entail. Before we get into the technical nitty-gritty of this, I want to just explain in a one-sentence way what this technology is applied to. This movie is about a Bravo squadron, right?
Yep.
A group of heroes in the Iraq War in 2003.
correct? It's 2004. The film is set in 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Early in the Iraq War.
They're fighting in 2003. This is Super Bowl 2004.
It's not the Super Bowl. It's a
not?
Thanksgiving game. Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting, because it's based on a Super Bowl performance, right? I mean, this is obviously fictionalized.
Kind of. It's based. This is based on.
Didn't Destiny Child actually do the Super Bowl in 2004?
I don't think so. No, they weren't big enough for that. Let's
I would
look up
check that.
who performed at Super Bowl 38, which was, of course, between the Carolina Panthers and the New England Patriots.
Did you do that from memory?
No. Beyonce sang the national anthem, but the halftime show is, I believe, the notorious halftime show where Janet Jackson's breast is exposed by Justin Timberlake.
Yes.
So it's like a weird medley where like Jessica Simpson did something and they did something, so whatever. Anyway.
And he was going to have us naked by the end of the song.
The point being, it's a big football game.
It's a big football game.
This is just the Thanksgiving game in Dallas, a big football game that's going to have a halftime show.
Squadron's gone viral for their heroism through a cell phone video, and now they're being brought out at the halftime show in this sort of like tribute to patriotism and our wartime heroes. And the lead character, Billy Lynn, is the super introverted, internalized dude who's quietly sort of crumbling from PTSD in this super overwhelming set of circumstances. The movie takes place all over this one day where they're about to be feted.
Yes.
And the next morning they were going to be
It basically takes place over like 4 hours.
Right. So it's this one day where they're treated like heroes before they're just going to be sent back into the ship.
They're going to be sent back, and there are subplots running, such as like Chris Tucker plays a PR person who's trying to sell their story and make them some money.
Right.
Kristen Stewart plays Billy's sister, who's trying to convince him not to return to war to get an honorable discharge.
He went
he got
enlisted in the first place, but she's now the anti-war figure. And then you also have Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel plays the
shirted the entire
sergeant.
film, so you know this is a supporting role for him. It's not a Vin Diesel film. It's him.
True.
He's a company player.
True. Who is the person that from their squad that they lost in combat, so they're mourning him. This is all based on a novel written by Ben Fountain in 2012. And Ben Fountain is like, it was his first novel. He's like a short story writer, I guess.
And it was a well-regarded novel, but it's not like a bestseller.
It's an acidically satirical novel that was well-regarded. The movie was written by James Seamus's assistant, who was an associate producer on Life of Pi. That's just stuff you need to know.
Sure. But that's a big thing is the novel is mostly his internal monologue and is about the contrast between what Billy Lynn's seeing around him and his commentary on how much bullshit is around him. It's him sort of calling out the hypocrisy of the entire situation.
It's a movie about, the hypocrisy of the Iraq War.
The movie is now a kid who barely speaks.
And the
Played
reason
by Joe Alwyn, right out of drama school, Taylor Swift's boyfriend now.
I graduated 2 days earlier, right. And then it's got Garrett Hedlund, Steve Martin, Vin Diesel, Kristen Stewart, Chris Tucker.
Wildcast.
So that's the story that he applied all this state-of-the-art technology to.
And the idea of that being that there's that a lot of war veterans will talk about that hyper-real feeling of coming back and feeling both removed and too present in their environment. And so this technology that definitely creates that feeling. The thought was that could be an interesting way to reflect
this. It
this.
is being artistically deployed. It's not just like, well, let's try it. There is
a
thematic purpose to the high frame rate.
But also after Life of Pi, he got so interested in continuing to push boundaries. He wanted to make this, Muhammad Ali?
Yes.
He wanted to throw him in
George Foreman movie.
Yes, which I believe he still sort of like has on the back burner.
Right.
Like, that's not
they
dead.
shot test footage for that.
Yeah.
Right. And that was when he started experimenting with all this because he thought that upping the frame rate would help shooting boxing, not having to go in slow motion, actually having the impact of the punches in real time, being able to show it in a way that was never actually able to be captured on camera before. And that movie just kept on getting slowed down, and he decided to apply a lot of those sort of breakthroughs he'd been working on to this film.
Yeah. Yes. Ang Lee has a whole theory that he believes that action is shot in slow motion because frame rates are not capable of actually portraying action.
Blurs.
Yes.
Now,
all right.
I just know that, like, a thing I'd heard people work on this movie say is that the goal was to make the movie feel like you're having a panic attack.
Right.
And I
like that idea.
And I will say, like, as someone who has
the weird crispness of like everything.
All three of us, all four of us in this room have had our battles with anxiety and weird mental fogginess and all that sort of stuff. I know when I'm in an insane state of anxiety, this is kind of how the world looks to me.
Yes.
It's that insane thing where I feel super overstimulated, movement feels really overwhelming, and I can't stop focus on everything all the time.
Yes.
And so at a certain degree, on paper, you're like, this sounds unbelievable. But it's also really fascinating that the movie doesn't feel very subjective in a way where you're like, this is how things look to him.
Yes.
It's like you're watching him in his environment, and watching him is overwhelming.
So
yeah, that's true.
Let's get into the tech of it, because
Yes.
I truly
you do the tech of it.
I truly believe
You
that
don't have to do any more preambles. Just
I
get
truly
into
believe
it.
it will help contextualize this conversation.
No more preambles.
Okay, so how much do you guys know about how cameras work and all this stuff?
No, just go for it.
Fair amount,
Question.
pitiful next to you.
Sure. Right.
Got it.
Just
no,
talk.
I just want. So
assume little, because we're talking to our listeners as well.
got it.
It's
So,
not that they don't know anything.
but I want to
Some
try to
of them
explain
might
this
not.
in a
I don't
clear
know.
way. So feel free to
Manuel
ask
Lebesky
questions.
listens to every episode.
He does.
That's why I have all these notes
Cheaper
that's
cast.
trying to organize the best way to describe it, because it's a little complicated. It just folds in on itself. Okay, so first, the way you think about all cameras is you're trying to control light. And there's three big questions that you are trying to determine is how long. So you got film, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to figure out how long light hits our film, which light hits our film, and how much that light hits our film. Those are the three elements that cameras are trying to control.
Sure.
So starting with film. We know film, it's a piece of plastic that has gelatin and chemicals on it. Silver halide is the chemical. The idea is that this is a chemical that when light hits it, it reacts. An interesting property of it is that you can have chemical that is more or less sensitive to light. The more sensitive to light it is, the grainier the chemical is going to be. And we measure that through a term called ISO or ASA. Mm-hmm. ISO is the term we use. So basically, if a film is really sensitive to light, it'll have a high ISO. If it's not that sensitive to light, it'll have a low ISO. The way ISOs work is like you have 100, 200, 400, 800. 200 ISO film is twice as sensitive as 100 ISO film.
Sure.
400 ISO film, twice. That's the idea of
That's
it.
when people talk about high speed
Yes.
film stock, and that's also why that has sort of been the biggest sort of forward trek of film technology, is making film stock more and more reactive to less and less light.
Yes.
So you don't have to make everything as blandly and broadly lit.
Right.
And
Shine a bunch of lights and everything.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a lot of people that are like, yes, but isn't everything digital now? Yes, but I'm going to explain film, because how digital works is them translating the terms of film and the concepts of film to digital. So start with so that's what ISO is. That's sensitivity. You have an ISO rating of stuff. Okay, so
this is like a symphony orchestra you're setting up. Like that's your violin player, like warming up in the corner.
It all comes into play in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so how long light hits our film? Okay, that's an important aspect of all of this. So we all know 24 frames per second is how movies work for the most part. That is, you're taking 24 pictures a second. And the way the film works is that you have an individual cell in your camera. You cover up a cell of it, a cell of this thing. You uncover it to expose it to light, and then you cover it back up, and you cover it back up. Then you move the film to the next frame. You uncover it, you cover it back up. 24 frames a second is you're doing that 24 times. That's sort of what the clicking noise is that frame moving. So you would think that means that a 24 frame per second film, each film is being exposed for a 24th of a second. That's not correct, though,
Philistines.
because, as you can imagine, for part of that time, you're covering up the film to move it to
Sure.
the next frame. Because if you're just moving it, it's going to smear. Like when you do a long exposure, you know those photos where it's like someone holding a flashlight and moving it, and it's like they're able to write with light in the sky.
Right.
That's what would happen if you're moving the film without covering it up. So you cover it up with something that's called a shutter. And a shutter, think of like a record, a spinning record, okay? Or like a pizza, okay?
Something round.
Something round. It spins, okay? And you take pizza slices away.
Okay.
So let's say we take half the pizza slices away. That means we have a half circle that's spinning. When that half circle is not covering the film, that's being exposed. When it covers it, it's being covered.
Sure.
Now, if we take half the slices away, we have 180 degrees. That is a window that's 180 degrees. That's called the 180 degree shutter. If we only take one pizza slice away, that's 30 degrees. That's called a 30 degree shutter. And the effect that this has is you're more or less smearing that image, right? So when you think of like films where people get super high or like stuff like that, where it's like things are warping and sort of moving and smearing, that's when you have a wide shutter angle, aka like more than 180 degrees. When you think
More
of like
slices of pizza. Is stuffed crust industry standard though? Or?
yes, stuffed crust is standard.
Yeah.
It just helps to spin a little bit more.
Right.
When you have a narrow window, that's called a low shutter angle. And that's something like in Saving Private Ryan, when like bombs hit and it feels all like choppy and really sharp, that's a low shutter angle. So
when it's kind of that, what am I looking for? When it feels almost strobe light.
Yeah, when it feels like a strobe, a strobe light sort of thing going off. That's because you're not seeing motion blur, which is what it's called when motion smears across the screen. Okay, so that's shutter angle. Whenever you hear shutter angle, that's all it is how many pizza slices you're taking away from the spinning disc.
Now, the thing I just want to butt in and say, because this is always the thing I find most interesting about the entire history of film, is that 24 frames per second being the standard was kind of an arbitrary decision.
Oh boy, am I going to get into this.
Okay. But it then becomes the language that all of us get used to in terms of how any filmed media looks.
Yes.
24 frames per second. It's like a refrain.
Right. It's not based on the way we see, it's based on the technical limitations of the time, and then that becomes the language for the next century.
Exactly. But I'm going to get into the physics of stuff because there's a reason why 24 frames gets into it. Okay, so
now we have a cello
So far,
player.
we know how this works. We got
Cello
our
and
frames per
violin.
second, which is how many pictures we're taking per second is frames per second, and our shutter angle is how long in that frame that it's being exposed. Okay, so now we have to figure out what light reaches our film, and that's where lenses come in. Lenses are just pieces of glass, concave, convex, that are taking light and refracting it into your film or whatever your your image sensor, anything that is. Okay. Long lenses are when you zoom in on something, when you're seeing a small area. Wide lenses are when you're seeing a lot. We call wide lenses short lenses because the glass is closer together and the lens is physically shorter.
He's on page two. Folks.
Page 2. So now we get into focus. The way lenses work is that, I know I'm flipping through my
camera lenses. Mm-hmm.
The way focus works is this light that's reflecting through the lens is based on the curvature of the glass. There's a point in front of your lens where things are in focus. They are as sharp as possible. And from that point, things that are closer to the camera or farther to the camera go less out of focus.
Your depth of field.
That's depth of field.
Yeah, Ben. Ben's doing guitar solo.
And so a wide depth of field is when everything's in focus, and a narrow depth of field, the shallow depth of field, is when only a really small plane is in focus.
So an example is when you see in a movie, they pull focus.
Yes.
It's like wide, and then they zero in on an object or a person.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the most base way of describing it is how much of the background is in focus around whatever the central focal point of the shot is.
Exactly. And depth of field is really important because it determines all of your focus and everything that you're seeing in the frame. And there's a couple things that affect your depth of field. First and foremost is the length of your lens. A longer lens, a long lens where you're zoomed in, that's going to have a shallower depth of field.
Right.
So that's like when you see like a close-up of a tear going down someone's cheek, and the tear is in focus, but even their cheek is not.
Yeah.
That's shallow depth of field, long lens. When you have a short lens, wide angle, there is a much wider depth of field. Okay. And that's why when you like shoot like a landscape, you can see mountains in the distance are all in focus because when you're wide, the focus can go on to infinity. Okay.
And Ang Lee tends to be a sort of long lens kind of guy. Like Brokeback Mountain is a movie that's
gorgeous.
All like long lens photography because you're seeing them in their landscapes.
You had to get
and
Steve Coogan's
totally
entire performance
exactly.
shot.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. We've set up in an episode that Steve Coogan played the mountain. Go on, JD.
Set up the truth? Yeah. I mean, yes, we have set up the truth.
Right.
Another element that determines your depth of field is how close your subject is to the camera. So the farther away your subject is, the bigger your depth of field is going to be, wherever your focus plane is. And the closer your subject is to the lens, the shallower your depth of field is going to be. Again, think of shooting mountains versus shooting someone close up, tears going down their face. And also another way to think of wide angle lenses, like think of like Terry Gilliam. He'll shoot a close up with a wide angle lens sometimes, and more things will be in focus because he's a wide lens, and he's moving it physically closer. So, anyways, there's another element that affects your depth of field, Ben. That's your aperture. Your aperture is
here's the drum player now.
Yes, this is the intensity, how much light you're letting get to your film. The aperture is like, think of it like a sci-fi space door. It's a bunch of blades that form a circle.
Butthole.
You can make the
David.
Sorry.
David,
we're in cinema right
Steve
now.
Coogan played the mountain in Brokeback Mountain. Stuffed crust pizza. Just trying to keep it light
You
here.
redeemed yourself.
You can make that circle small or you can make that circle big, and that's your
that
aperture.
is like a butthole. Actually.
Okay, that's sort of
when
like a
you say it
butthole.
that way.
Kind of like a butthole. Think about it.
Obviously, if that circle is small, less light's getting through. If you're making the circle big, more light's getting through. We measure that with something called f-stops.
Yeah.
The lower the f-stop number, the bigger the circle. So f-stop of 1 is considered, or there can be a little bit more depending, all the way open. We call it all the way open.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have 1, 1.4, 2, 2.8, 4, 5.6,
right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
and that
number
gets,
goes
We
up.
should make it clear that this definition of f-stop is very different than Ben's definition of f-stop, which is a place where you can stop and fuck.
You want to pull over? I've got an f-stop over here. I know.
I-
about.
20 more miles to an F-stop. What do you say?
I vetted out an f-stop. It's
Oh, no.
5 minutes away.
But something to keep in mind is that the bigger your aperture is, the wider open it is, the shallower your depth of field is. And the smaller your aperture is, the more your depth of field is. That's why like a pinhole camera, everything's in focus, is because you have a really small, narrow aperture. Okay, so those are the major elements of how film works.
Well, wouldn't you say that the f-stop, changing that and judging how you're going to shoot something, it's like coolness versus like blown out, and like it being like really high contrast looking, and doesn't that kind of play into it as well?
Your f-stop doesn't necessarily affect your contrast too much, but what it does is it determines how much light is hitting it. So that's why you have light meters, things like that, and you're trying to expose so that everything looks at the right exposure, not too bright, not too dark.
But what you're talking about, Ben, when people sort of take strong stylistic choices like that, that's very often a byproduct of people applying the quote-unquote wrong method for that type of shot.
Yes.
Like what JD was saying about like shooting close-ups and like, you know, wide lenses like the Coen brothers do or Barry Sonnenfeld does, where it's like that weird, distorted, hyper-real kind of thing.
Right. It's like going up a few stops
Yes.
is what they say.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So now to talk about Billy Lynn.
Yes.
Now that you understand that those concepts of how that all works,
Just hit an hour. It's good. We're doing great.
we can cut out the big 3 stuff.
We're on page 3.
This is, you know, this episode's titled 12-Hour Walk, right?
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I would argue. I think it's more important to talk about the tech than to talk about the plot. of this movie.
100%.
Yeah.
So
Because we could burn through the plot in 10 minutes.
Plot? I mean,
right.
shrug.
Yeah.
120 frames per second. That is an insane endeavor because it is, again, way higher frame rate than anything you ever see.
So the camera spins around 120. The fucking, there's 120 pictures with the pizza per second.
Well, so now we're in digital. In digital, there's
It's a
not
calzone.
actually in digital. There's not actually a spinning pizza, but
That was funny. Everyone should be on the floor right now. Okay,
Now we're adding our horn section. So here comes the bassoon.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. It's digital film. You're right.
Yes.
Right. This is
Okay.
not celluloid.
So you don't have to worry about that mechanics now.
Sure.
Okay, so now I'm going to get into what's the best order of operations to do this
God.
stuff in? Okay, here's what I'm going to do.
Ben,
I'm
you
going to get
should
into
probably mark this episode as explicit, just because genuinely a lot of people are going to use this as masturbation material. There are so many blankies who like just fully get off on you explaining things in this detail.
But this is
I'm not joking.
I'm curious what you
People
would
are
think,
going to
David.
jerk off to this,
But-
and that's cool.
I believe that if there's a lot of blankies
It's cool.
There's a lot of blankies that are
There's a jerking
film
off joke in
critics,
this movie.
amateur film critics, things like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I believe that understanding the technology is important to being
No,
a
I
good
think
critic.
it is. You can't let it. Speaking as a film critic, you can't let it overwhelm your writing or your
Right.
thought process, because that's not, for one, what your readers really want, and for two, there's more things going. But you should, yes, the more you understand, the better. Obviously,
You could tell the best critics are the people who have an understanding of how all the different aspects actually work, rather than just looking at the final product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for all this stuff, I'm trying to explain it as simply as possible. So there's some super nerds that might know that I'm avoiding some details or maybe simplifying some things.
Like sort of toppings on the pizza.
Yes. So here's some crazy shit we're going to get into.
Or pizza in the butthole.
The way film works, and this is now getting to Billy Lynn stuff. We're out of the film school stuff. Now this is me getting into what's crazy about Billy Lynn.
We're walking the walk.
The way Walking the Walk 2018, the way film works, people often say what allows a bunch of series of still images to create the illusion of motion is something called persistence of vision, which is the idea that, like, if you right now wave your hand in front of your face, you see that the image of your fingers is blurring. And that's considered persistence of vision, which is that the image sort of smears in your retina and in your brain. And so that helps you determine in what direction things are going, how motion's working.
okay.
That's not true. That is
Oh my
not
God.
what dictates motion. That's not what makes cinema works. So now I'm going to get into some Crazy stuff. So there's a bunch of these experiments that prove that this is not how it works.
Here comes the maraca section.
Oh my God.
David, you can't. Oh my God, this is.
Well, no,
if there's one podcast
You
to get
had
into
me
cinema.
with you're describing how cameras work, but now you're like, now let me upend to you the thought process.
We gotta talk vision,
All right,
baby.
go on.
So there's these famous experiments where you take an image of a red dot. It's a still image of red dot, no motion blur, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you take that away and put up another image of a red dot in another location. Okay, if you go between those images, one to the other, and you start increasing the pace that you're going between the two, suddenly your brain starts to assume motion between them. And instead of it being one image of one circle here and another here, your brain goes, that circle's moving from here to here, back and forth, back and forth. And in the science experiments, they refer to this in a certain amount of hertz or a certain amount of milliseconds. I've sort of tried to transmutate it into frames per second. Okay?
Yeah.
So the frequency at which you do that, it starts as being still images, and then, let me get my exact.
Stage 4.
Yep.
Welcome to the 5 Towers Club, by the way.
From 0.
Congrats.
Thank you. From 0 to 5 frames per second, it's just succession, 2 images. Then you get to partial movement, where you get the sensation of things moving slightly. And then at around between 16 and 18 frames per second, which is really interesting, you have what's called beta movement. Okay?
Which is just like these like low testosterone,
Oh my God.
sort of cuck movements.
Hey, Ben, can you open that envelope?
Oh my gosh.
This is like Neil Patrick Harris hosting the Oscars.
That's sort of why I did this.
Ben is opening the envelope.
What's it say on the front there?
Griffin will make a joke about beta movement.
And just open it up.
Fuck. This is amazing.
Beta cuck movement.
Okay.
I mean, the guy knows me. We're very good. Very old friends.
Oh my fucking God.
I just knew.
Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry. So, around 16 to 18 frames.
1,000 comedy points.
Thank
That
you.
really was a tour de force.
That was
Thank you. Listen, you know people. You know someone, you know them.
We started doing improv together.
You have beta movement, which is interesting. And beta
Yeah.
movement is also called optimal movement. That is the moment at which movement seems the most clear. And what's 18 frames per second, David?
What? I don't know. 18
That's
frames
the
per
frame
second?
rate that silent film started at.
Oh, sure. Yes,
That was the
yes.
first time when people were like, oh, this is going to be the frame rate. And that's because it matches up with beta movement, optimal movement. Then something crazy starts to happen. As you increase the movement even further, beyond 18 frames per second, you get to something that is called the phi phenomenon. Which
What
the
now?
phi phenomenon. PHI, Greek letter.
Sure.
And that is that your eye stops looking at it going.
I can't get over the letter. Sorry.
The letter thing's crazy. What if he hadn't done the joke?
I almost didn't say
I w-
cuck either. I did low testosterone, and then I was like, should I put it to bed?
You
And I was
should
like,
have also
you gotta
written
fit cuck in
David
there.
will be exasperated by the joke. That would have been the true coup de
Yeah.
grace if
Yeah.
you
On
had
the- on
also
the back,
gotten that
yeah.
in. Yeah, right.
Just sidebar for one quick second. That's why when people parody like silent film comedies, it's often
Right.
sped
People
up
move too
movement
quickly or whatever.
because it
Yes,
was right a lower frame rate
Yes.
that now has been converted when we watch it.
So you hit this thing called the phi phenomenon, which is when your eye stops thinking that the red dot is moving and starts observing the area around the dot is moving theoretically. And that's considered pure motion because you're not observing an object moving, you're observing the idea of motion without a visual cue to it, which is only interesting to me because that starts happening around 30 frames per second, which is when people start to go, how come video looks so weird, which is around 30 frames.
Wait, because like was the classic complaint about Hobbit at 48 was that it looked like a home movie. Quote,
Yes.
unquote,
Behind
you know?
the scenes footage,
Right.
it looked like a soap opera, all the things that people
Yes,
throw
or
out.
it looks like you have motion smoothing on your television, right?
Which is a
uh,
technology that creates fake frames in between to
Right.
try to
Which-
get rid of any blurriness.
which is a technology designed kind of like for sports, things like that are very
Yes.
fast
Video games.
moving, video games.
things that people have accepted at high frame rates.
Right. And then you buy your TV and like half the fucking country just like watches movies with motion smoothing on and like doesn't think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
And film nerds, whatever, like fall asleep crying.
Go to the
every
bar
night
and go like,
thinking about
hey, can I
this.
see your remote for a second?
Right. And I was in an Airbnb in Alaska, and the TV had it was like super motion smooth. I was kind of impressed, it took me forever to figure out how to turn it off.
Well, so here's the thing why motion smoothing is so weird is that what it's actually doing is, so when something's at 20 frames per second, the time between those frames, the image changes, right? Mm-hmm. You're in one position, you're in another position. Your brain has to make up what the movement is between that. And so the more your brain is able to interpolate, add up whatever it wants that it thinks is going on between there, that's what makes it feel sort of that classic movie feeling, because your brain is adding in a lot of the gaps there. Then the higher the frame rate is, your brain's not adding in gaps. And with motion smoothing, what it's doing is it's not even the actual motion. It's a computer trying to guess what the middle is, which is slightly off, but your brain can't figure it out.
Yeah. But it's like the dreamlike quality that is at this point over a century baked into the cake of how we perceive movies and television.
Yes.
What that visual language is at its very core. And for years, like Douglas Trumbull visual effects.
Yep.
Titan was trying to get the industry to go to 30.
Yes.
And 30 was viewed as too big of a jump.
Right.
People won't stand for it. So the fact that like Ang Lee and Peter Jackson started full on multiplying rather than just like slowly adding frames is insane.
Right, because here's the next step of all this, the physics stuff, is that I think 30 frames is weird because you're right around this 5 phenomenon, which this is me totally theorizing the physics of that being tied, but I think there's something to that. But then once you get above 33 frames per second, you get into like simultaneity, which is basically your eye, if two images are going back and forth, is unable to distinguish one from the other. And as you move up towards infinity, that gives even more there's no gap between the images. They're just on top of each other in your eye. So the human eye, for the most part, like the highest that's ever been recorded is like 500 something frames per second theoretically. But
man died.
That man, well, it's like Air Force
he
pilots.
watched it back, right? Yeah.
Well, no, what it
they
is
lost oxygen. Yeah.
What it is that they will show someone like a footage and then flash an image for whatever the millisecond is, and if they can perceive it, so most people are actually around 45 or a little around there, a little above. So 120 frames per second actually gets us to the point where, for the most part, for most people, it is more frames per second than our eyes and brains can actually process. And so for us, it just appears as reality. So our brain isn't interpolating anything between the frames because all the information is given to it, which in film, and Ang Lee and John Toll talk about this in really major ways.
Want to remove the window was the thing they kept on saying. We want to, films always had this window between it. It's kind of foggy. We want to remove the window and make it look like reality.
You're looking at a box on the wall.
If the window is good.
Well,
this is the central question.
So here's what's so interesting.
I need the window.
In most movies, you're looking at a box on the wall and the picture happens to be changing.
Right.
Once you get above 120 frames per second, especially with stereoscopic 3D, 4K, and Ang Lee talks about this, it's really interesting. You are not aware of the box anymore. You're looking at the film, we're
it's
laughing.
like there are just people on the other side.
Yeah, it looks it looks like there's a hole in the theater, and you're just seeing reality. Which means the way that, like right now, the way that we're all looking at each other, if you look around anywhere, you're not perceiving the edges of your frame. You're just you're focusing on the things around you because your eye has so much to take in. When you watch this movie, you're not aware of the frame, and as such, the language of film goes out the window. Framing, contrast, all these things go away.
You're not watching just people on a stage. You're still watching a movie that cuts, that has close-ups, people's heads,
that has
people's
like
arms.
dissolves.
Yes,
things
this
that,
is
like,
a movie
blow
that has a
your
lot
brain.
of complicated visual tricks, right? Yeah,
Yes.
and I mean, like Andy Richter, you said that joke about like his grandma watching a movie and you cut to someone's head and she's like, a severed head! That's funny. Like,
but this movie kind of feels like watching that. And in a way he hasn't done in his career up until this point, it has a lot of, as much as I said, it isn't a subjective film in terms of being from Billy Lynn's viewpoint, a lot of the conversations are subjective close-ups. The coverage is like Chris Tucker looking you in the eyes. Right. So we were like walking out the theater and being like, that's the weirdest fucking phenomenon, is seeing Chris Tucker deliver a monologue. His head is like 30 feet tall.
Yep.
And it looks like you're seeing that through a window. It looks like King Kong is outside your window talking to you about a movie deal.
It is wild. And here's the other thing about that, is that there's something in frame called the language of film, which is certain rules that we believe exist
Is that like the line, for example?
So there's the 180 degree.
Right.
There's something called the 30 degree rule. Here's a really interesting one. 30 degree rule. This is a rule that when you are making a film, and if you have a camera pointed at something and you're like in a wide shot, if you're going to cut to that same subject again, you have to change the angle by at least 30 degrees. Otherwise, your eye notices the cut.
Sure. Right,
because basically, the image needs to be different enough so that your eye isn't as attuned to what's changing.
We had a different 30-degree rule on set of The Tick, by the way, which was the soundstage had to be 30 degrees because Peter's costume was so hot.
That sounds like paradise to me.
Not even joking. A lot of crew people wearing parkas
But
in
there's
July.
the line, so say it's like JD and I are talking, right? Is that your camera would stay on one side of our conversation.
That's the 180 degree.
The orientation of the frame, if David's on the left and JD's on the right, if you do a hard cut over to fully the other side where then David was on the right and JD was on the left, your brain would reject it.
It would just look stupid.
But
Although Phantom Thread crosses the line many times, and it's one reason those conversations are so strange and disorienting.
But
it can be used much like we were talking about, breaking rules on purpose to get a disorienting effect.
The great Jeff Erb, rest in peace, one of the things he said about the line, Jeff Erb, he was a cinematographer.
Sounds like an herb.
Jeff Erb.
He was a cinematographer. He was an amazing. He was part of the ASC. He was a professor at NYU.
I don't know. He sounds like a Mario Kart villain to me.
Yes.
But he basically said, don't have to wear 180 degree rule. The thing that you have to keep in mind is characters should be looking the same direction on screen. And that's all that your eye really cares about.
How do you spell this guy's name?
ERB.
Interesting. There he is. Jeffrey D. Erb.
Yeah, he was incredible. Passed away a couple
he
years
died?
ago.
Wikipedia says he's still alive.
Not true.
No.
Wow.
Update it.
That sucks.
But, so 30 degree rule, a great example. Have you done VR, anyone here?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I just did it on mushrooms recently.
Yes, listen to that episode of Night Call. It's actually really great. He talks about it.
So something in VR that they learned is that you can't cut in VR because people throw up. So they do fades to black and then fades back up.
Yeah.
Because in VR, when your reality just changes, it's upsetting to your balance. Same thing happens in 120 frames. The 30 degree rule does not work. Coverage does not work because as you look at it, you believe you are perceiving reality, and when it changes, it seems off-putting.
This is what I want to hear. This is why I want to know why this movie looks so fucking weird. And I don't mean the crispness of the visuals.
Yes.
I mean how the camera moves.
The way your brain
Things
processes
like that.
the information on screen actually kind of hurts
As
you.
we were watching, I was trying to explain to my girlfriend like what was so unsettling about just the movies, the way the movie's visual language works, and it's hard to explain.
Yes, so
I'm not that smart. I'm stupid. I'm big dum-dum.
So here's a really interesting thing.
You're looking at me like you want me to deny that you're a big dum-dum.
I was like, imagine a spinning pizza. And she was like, I'm going to bed.
Yeah, she's like, I'm done with this. So people talk a lot about how like 3D is like color film and audio, sound being added to film. It's not, in my opinion, because we already had ways to communicate depth in film. And the two ways were focus and contrast. Those things both communicated depth. Now we're using 3D to communicate depth, and it's different. Right. So in this film, what they had to do is they started to realize is that contrast and shadows didn't work because we're used to a 2D plane, a square that we're dealing with the
it's a rectangle.
The rectangle that we're dealing with the balance of, right? Because we are looking into it and we're perceiving it as reality, we don't need contrast or lighting or focus to tell us anything about what we're supposed to be looking at. Because that would be like if you're looking out into the world and suddenly just one thing's in focus. That means that you need to get glasses.
Now, that's why I rewatched the movie in 3D last night, because I started out watching it in 2D high frame rate.
Yeah.
And if you're going to lose one thing, it's actually more disorienting to lose the 3D in watching it because the way it is shot and lit, there is zero depth in the image if you're not watching it in 3D.
Right.
Because of that, trying to mimic reality, quote unquote.
And so here's what they became up against when they're shooting this. When you shoot stereoscopic, you need two cameras. You basically have one camera for each eye. You have something that's called the beam splitter in the middle, which is a mirror that shoots light off of it into both cameras.
Of course.
Right. So they're shooting on Sony F65s, which are pretty heavy cameras.
Sure.
And you have this 3D rig and all this stuff that has to connect them and combine them. And when you're shooting 120 frames per second, you have a lot of your batteries, all the media is huge.
Noise.
Their rig was over 100 pounds, the camera. So Ang Lee talks about how he's so used to shooting Steadicam shots, things like that. A Steadicam operator
can hold.
cannot hold 130 pounds on their shoulders for more than 2 seconds.
And there's very little camera movement of any kind in this film. It's a lot of static, lockdown, long takes.
The moves feel very like jar. Like you really notice it when the camera moves.
And when you shoot stereoscopic, you need those two things to be totally in sync. So like for a great example of this is that they shot these on Master Prime, just really beautiful lenses, but they had to go through dozens of lenses to get 2 of each lens that matched, because lenses are, made by humans, fallible. Things will be wrong with them.
If only we could get rid of humans. That's page 5 of JD's manifesto.
Now, the humans ruin film, cinema.
Oh boy!
So they're shooting this with these giant camera rigs that are hard to move. On top of that, you need to be perfectly synced. Something they ran into while shooting this was that because they're 120 frames per second, they could not get the cameras to be totally in sync. They would be off by a couple frames, which totally changed
sounds like
how
a
media
fucking
managed.
Stupid idea then.
It's crazy.
This is like the
it's
room
never
when
been
Tommy
done before.
Wiseau is like, we'll shoot digital and film at the same time.
The thing that's crazy about this movie, craziest about this movie for me, is that he decided to apply all of this to making a full feature film that was going to be released in theaters rather than going like, let me get technology companies to give me $5 million to make a short.
Blank check, baby.
Which is kind of like Inarritu's VR film. Like that's a short.
Right, that kind of
where
thing.
he's like, let me try and begin to develop
Legendary
a way to
gave
use
him
this.
the budget to sort of test out what happens if
and
you
he
give,
uses it in a clever way, and it's like there's an immersive concept to that movie that makes sense.
But this is an all or nothing thing in the same way that Attack of the Clones was, where it was like, I'm going to do the learning curve.
We're just going to build this whole plane in the air.
While making the movie and just put it up on screen.
And we're going to do it on
this for you, cinema community.
We're going to do it on a script that's like from an untested writer. That's like, not a movie that's screaming out for this. Like we said, there is some thematic concept here, but like there are other ways to use visual and film language to communicate that this guy is feeling weird. It's been done.
Right. The crazy side effect of that for me is that because of the way they had to light everything, frame everything, set up the camera, move, the way they directed actors, the way they dressed or didn't dress the sets, all of these things, the film is essentially unwatchable in every other format.
Yes. So
that it's not like a 3D movie where you can just remove one of the two.
Watch it
in like you can watch Avatar in 2D and you argue that it's not as good, but it still does work in the way that you're used to watching a movie. Yeah. It makes sense. This movie looks strange even when it's in normal frame rate.
Yes. So to answer your question of why does this look wild? So first, the camera rig is totally unwieldy. Right. So the speed at which you're used to shooting stuff is impossible. Second, as they start to shoot, they learn that coverage does not work, which is when you're shooting a scene, you get close-ups, angles. Right. That doesn't work with
this. And then you can put it all together in the editing room. Right.
Then, here's why I explained all of how cameras work to you guys.
Ben has the biggest smile on his face.
Here's why I explained why cameras work to you. So, because you're using all this technology, and this technology, I'll start by saying this. The production designer, there's a great quote where they talk about, usually when you production design a scene. So like right now, if you look at like the wall of this building, right? We're looking at a wall in this somewhat newly built studio. You can tell that the paint looks like it's a newly built studio. And that's because there's not years of layers of paint painted on top of it. And we perceive that because we're in this room. Whereas when you go into like a New York apartment where there's 40 layers of paint, you can sort of perceive that. But when it's in movies, you don't really notice that. In Billy Lynn, you do notice it. The production designer was like, usually in films, I would put 3 or 4 coats of paint on a wall. And in this film, I had to put 30 or 40 because you would notice it. You would notice it. Likewise, the makeup artists were like, you couldn't put makeup on because you could see it.
You see it. You see any makeup on these people's faces. And it gets into like, if any, listeners have ever been on any film set of any sort, there's always that disorienting experience, even if you're on the lowest level thing, where you're just like, God, this looks so fake. I can't believe it photographs as real on camera.
Right. And they're like, we've been doing this for 100 years.
Styrofoam.
We know what it's supposed to look like.
People just have through trial and error, these things have been developed bit by bit. And they essentially tried to rewrite the entire language of cinema in one 120-minute movie.
And here's what's so wild is not
just the language of cinema, but the language of how you produce a film.
Right.
So every different department.
Yes, every department. And anything that looks slightly off or slightly manufactured is glaring in Billy Lynn. But because they're shooting in 3D, your beam splitter takes away one stop of light. It takes away half of your light. Then, because you're 120 frames per second,
insane.
That takes away 2 1/3 stops of light.
Fuck.
So now
we're losing stops everywhere.
Now we're 3.5 stops of light. Okay. Then Ang Lee is like, everything needs to be in focus. What did we learn about focus? To have things be in focus, you have to have a small aperture, which means what? You need more light.
Right.
So they got into the situation where they needed sometimes 5 or 6 times as much light. Because also the F-65s they're dealing with sort of have a built-in digital ISO of like 800. And anytime you push it above that, you start getting digital noise. So, of
course,
they were anything that was slightly not real stuck out like a sore thumb. But they also needed to find a way to pour light in a way that has never been done in cinema before, which is like square peg, round hole. Those things do not fit. That's why, like, if you look at the behind the scenes stuff of them shooting like the Super Bowl, there's these big helium balloons you can fill with helium, float into the air, put really bright lights in. They had like 10 of them in the air just to shoot as much light as possible onto the subjects. Likewise, Ang Lee was like, contrast doesn't work. Lighting doesn't work. We have to keep it low contrast just so as an audience member, you can look at it and just pick out what you want to look at in the frame. So it's this insane endeavor of anything that's slightly messed up, you're going to notice. And everything is messed up because we're doing this.
And you're also,
Right.
I
You have
mean,
to find
the experience that everyone who's seen this movie projected in the full Ang Lee format, a format they never came up with a name for.
They should just call it the full Ang Lee.
Yeah. In Angovision is that you can't stop focusing in on weird things in the background.
Sure.
Like you get really hung up on signs on walls or like certain background actors. Especially if something doesn't look totally right. If they're background actors, because a big thing on set is you go like, hey, we need clean sound. So all the background actors just mime talking.
Now,
and you can't stop focusing on how fake the people pretending to talk in the background look.
Can I say
which is something you never pay attention to.
Yes.
It's weird that you would do all of this in a movie where you have someone playing a fake Beyonce.
Yes, that's the thing.
That's the weirdest.
The weirdest of all things.
I know I've already said other things are the weirdest element of the movie, but that is truly the weirdest.
Immediately the second
Yeah.
was like, that's not Beyonce. And I was like, well, no. I mean, they couldn't get Beyonce. It's all that you can think about. So the second she's on screen in the most important scene in the movie.
And you only ever see the back of her head, and it's the most glaring thing in the world.
And like every time she turns around and the other members of Destiny's Child, like, which they might do, like if they're deep in the background, you notice it because you're like, oh, I see how we're not really able to see their face. Right.
But there's even this shot where it's like her in the foreground from behind adjusting her wig, and in the background, totally in focus, you see the line of like the 7 Bravo guys. And it is somehow the most amateur hour shot.
It looks like garbage. That's exactly it. You're like, why does this look cheesy? Like this movie is supposed to be like a visual revolution. It looks cheesy.
It looks cheesy because anything that's not real, you notice.
Right.
Which is why I think this technology should be used to make like a film like Koyana Stazzi or like Baraka Samsara.
Right. But so much better for documentaries.
And that's why I thought casting what's his name as the lead is really interesting because he's not necessarily an actor. He's a guy that's sort of new. Whereas something that Ang Lee talks about and that you and I noticed was when you look into the eyes of the actors performing this movie, you see an actor performing. You see all of the insecurity. You see them remembering their lines.
It feels like you're reading their mind. You see them making the choices. And the thing that's astounding is I think Joe Alwyn is really good in this movie and comes off the best of all the actors.
He's good. He has the least talking to do. I disagree that he's the best in the movie, though.
Garrett Hedlund?
Yeah.
Is very good as well.
He's excellent. He's the only one who seems to have figured it out. Like, because it's not just the visuals. It's also the script is so weird.
The script's very odd. But I was going to say
the
thing with Joe Alwyn is that
he's good, though.
Is that he's straight out of drama school.
Yeah.
So he is a real actor, but he's not an actor who has any real prior experience with on-camera stuff in any serious way. So
he's maybe he doesn't have the movie-making tricks that he has to ignore.
They didn't have to teach him how to unlearn because, like, people like Vin Diesel and Steve Martin, my best friends, are people who have, over decades, developed such a strong sense of technique in terms of what their relationship to the camera is. But Vin Diesel, above all else, is an actor who's like, I know exactly how I play on camera. I know what my angles are. I know the decibel I talk at.
Sure.
Like this is my relationship. And then you watch him in this and you're like, I see Vin Diesel thinking about when lunch is going to be.
Fair enough. I mean, he's hungry. But I mean...
He's hungry.
I think Vin is fine in the movie. I think Kristen Stewart's fine. I even think Steve Martin's okay.
All of them play better when you're watching it in normal frame rate.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I was going to say.
True.
All of them do.
Yeah, everything does.
Because that's
much.
Their medium. They're the 3 actors who are the most... or the 4 actors who are most experienced in the old school way of cinematic language. Joe Alwyn works well because it's like Ang Lee taught him how to be on camera specifically for this camera. And they talk about how they did so many fucking tests with him because the studio didn't want to hire a totally unknown guy who'd graduated from drama school literally 2 days before they put him on the plane. So they did like 10 tests with him. They kept him in Texas, like doing tests, or LA, I think, for 10 consecutive tests over the course of like 2 weeks. So they were testing him and testing the technology at the same time. So I think his performance is the most married to everything they were trying to do technology.
Right. And that's the other thing. As they shot this, they couldn't watch it in 120 frames per second. The technology did not exist for them to watch dailies. In fact, even in post-production, in editing, they could not watch it in 120 frames per second.
They're
so
just
they
like
were making a
crossing their
movie and being
fingers
like,
and
right,
hoping.
hopefully this will all come out in the wash.
They're making a movie like the Lumiere brothers, where it's like you shoot it and you go like, I hope this turns out.
And you don't know.
I think that's...
have a question, though.
Shoot.
If I'm traveling, let's say going on a trip somewhere,
Like a long halftime walk.
you know, what would I use to transfer things from one place to another?
Well, that's the thing. Look, if you're taking
That's
a
my
long
question.
halftime walk, you don't want a lot of things in your pocket, right? Jangling around, cutting into your thighs and the like.
All right.
You know? And
I
a lot
hate
of,
when that happens.
a lot of people go like, luggage, it's so inconvenient, it's so heavy. Why would I pack a bag? Well, maybe someone has just entered this space, a disruptor, into the luggage space to send all your problems with luggage away.
Oh, you're talking about the team of thinkers, seekers, and designers who've created a new kind of luggage with power. And I don't mean power like emotional power. I mean like
real power.
well, like you can plug your phone into the thing.
Like Power season 6 on Stars. You know?
Exactly. And this is a product they designed after asking thousands of people how they pack, why they travel, what bugs them about their luggage.
Mm-hmm.
So this bag, it doesn't have sticky wheels, you know, solving old
Hate
problems,
sticky wheels.
but also solves new problems like dead cell phones.
Yeah, well, it's got a battery built into it, so you can charge on the go. But here's the thing I really like about it, okay?
Okay. Shoot.
I sweat a lot. For a man as small as myself, and I use the term man very loosely,
Fair enough.
I sweat like Joe Cocker at Woodstock. And so if I go on vacation, my clothes are like, you don't get a second use out of them, right? When I pack my bag, I'm always like, dirty clothes in the same bag with the
but
clothes
this,
I
you're
didn't
saying
wear.
this thing's
Am I
got the
getting a plastic bag from a bodega and stuffing the dirty clothes
I get
inside?
you.
Here's the thing they do. Removable, washable, laundry bag.
They do.
Keeps
Inside
dirty
it.
clothes separate from clean inside. So you get to segregate your dirty clothes from your clean clothes. Maybe segregate was a loaded term to use, but you put it in there, you close it off, then when you get home, you pull the bag out, you put it in the wash, done.
All right.
Good.
Now, I got to tell you, sounds awesome because I currently don't have a home.
Ben is homeless, and this is not a joke.
I don't have an apartment, so I think I need this.
Ben's like Pete Holmes because he's crashing.
He's crashing.
And
all right.
several different applications of that term.
So
It ships
could
for free.
how could I get this?
Ships for free anywhere within the lower 48 states.
Great.
You're in one of those.
Compliant with all major U.S. airlines if you want to take it as a carry-on. You can get it in many sizes. The carry-on, bigger carry-on, the
Okay.
medium,
Okay.
the large.
Yeah, because you might be living on an airplane.
But if you want $20 off a suitcase, you visit awaytravel.com/check and you use promo code check during checkout.
Okay, so I check to make sure the promo code box is there, and then what do I type in?
I'm going to repeat myself. For $20 off a suitcase, visit awaytravel.com/check and use promo code check during checkout. That's $20. And, they're great. I have one. I'm taking it to Toronto in just a couple days.
Double humble brag.
Great. Well, thank you for answering my question. Let's get back to
The walk.
the episode.
Talking the walk 2018.
Getting back to talking the walk day. Ding dong.
Oh, who's that? Let me open.
Hey kids, it's me, Ronald McDonald, the official sponsor of Blank Check. If you come to local McDonald's and use the promo code Blanky, I'll cut your Big Mac in half.
Why is
You
he
can take one half now
the
and
fucking
take one half
clown
home.
from It? He's Pennywise.
That's what the kids like.
It's what
McDonald's
the kids
keeps
are
up with the
into
times.
Pennywise.
They got artisanal chicken sandwiches, and they got Pennywise. That's what the kids like.
I'm Ronald McDonald. Don't steal my burgers.
But 100% that is a real ad, so I recommend you go to a McDonald's, and when you're ordering, say to the cashier, promo code check.
Yes, and just wait.
And if they don't know what you're talking about, you go, I
Say it
heard
louder.
you were going to hack my Big Mac in half.
Hack my Mac.
Promo code check, hack
What
my
were
Mac.
we talking
Hashtag
about?
hack my Mac. We were talking the walk 2018.
Here's something interesting. Here's an interesting byproduct of all this stuff. In 3D films, usually, there's an issue, and this is a big issue in Life of Pi, where there's motion blur issues because motion will start mid-frame or something like that, and you get this like weird ghosting
The
feeling.
camera movement's too fast if the movement of the characters on screen's too fast.
Yeah, and it doesn't work. In this, it's all good, baby. It all works.
Yeah. And you're watching like football players. I mean, you're watching dancers at the halftime show. People moving very fast.
Like, have you ever noticed in a movie when like the camera will like pan across a scene and you're like, oh, I can't look at that. And that's like motion judder. It's a problem that happens because your brain can't track all the changes that are happening,
and
especially
it's
with motion blur.
disorienting to look at in 3D, where it's trying to render blurs in 3 dimensions, which doesn't really make sense.
Life of Pi is a better movie than this movie.
Yeah, I would agree.
But 120 frames per second, that problem doesn't exist. So there's all these things that as you watch this movie where you're like, this feels weird and different. I can't tell why.
And this is the thing that I feel like suckers, I would say, some of these directors into this, like James Cameron, Peter Jackson, where they're like, I want my special effects to look cleaner. I want these like big action scenes to look be more easy to follow with your eyes.
148 frames per second is mostly a nightmare to watch, but anytime there's an entirely CGI creature on screen, you're like, this is actually pretty stunning.
Looks good.
Like Gollum looks amazing.
But
Everything
the
else
problem
around him
is
looks
that
bad.
a guy wearing Hobbit makeup looks like a guy wearing Hobbit makeup.
You can like see the seams of the nose. You see the difference of the refraction of the light, you know?
You
like,
see the guy in his eyes being like, am I a believable Hobbit right now?
100%.
Yes. You don't feel anymore like you're in fucking Rivendell or whatever.
Right.
Whereas in the original Lord of the Rings, shot on film, as far as I know, like where he's just like, let me point the camera at New Zealand. Like you're like, this seems like another world because there's a window.
Right.
It's like Bill.
Give me the window.
Well, it's like Bill Plimpton does the animations. He draws in like 2s or 4s, right? And you watch that and you enjoy it because your brain is interpolating between it. Here, oh boy, you're just getting reality. You're looking at Steve Martin and you're like, Steve Martin's not sure if he can do this. And Steve Martin is aware of the fact that he's wearing a suit that they just bought yesterday. Like you can tell all of these things.
And you're like, did Steve Martin get a facelift?
The thing
you
with
know, like you're looking at like all these aspects of things that could usually be hidden on camera. Plus you feel like you're looking into everyone's minds.
Steve Martin is the biggest one where you're just like, oh, that's Steve Martin. Like you, that's all I'm thinking about when he's in it. He's not playing a character. It's just Steve Martin. It's weird.
Do you know?
He's got weird
you're like,
makeup.
why is Steve Martin talking like that? That's not how he talks.
Yeah.
Do you know that he was offered the Chris Tucker part? Ang Lee really wanted him for that. They announced that like Steve Martin was in talks for Billy Lynn. Then they said he had dropped out because he didn't want to play that part. And then he came back and was like, I'd like to play the owner. And then he was back in the movie. And this part feels like a far less natural fit for him, which I find fascinating because in Born Standing Up, his memoir, he talks about how he felt completely discouraged from being in dramatic films because he remembers going to see the premiere of The Spanish Prisoner, the Mammoth film he's in.
Right.
And the audience laughed when he came on screen. And he was like, that's it. Conclusively, they will not take me seriously as a serious person. I don't want to fall on my face and embarrass myself by trying to do that. And then in this movie, they offered him the part that was a little more comedic in a drama.
Right.
And then he decided to go for the character that is very dry.
Yeah.
Very dramatic.
Right. Right.
Really weird. And then you're watching him and seeing that intent in his performance.
Yeah, it's wild.
I have a question about VR.
Yes.
You brought that up earlier, and I just experienced that.
Yes.
And it was intense.
Yeah.
But that was because I was on...
You were on mushrooms.
Psilocybin.
That'll make everything
And that will
intense.
make, things feel very intense.
And you were doing that on our shroom. Vin Diesel's fallen hero from this movie, which you don't even know his name because you didn't watch it.
Yes. So I was thinking about we were like the whole time, my friends and I who went, we were talking about the implications of this technology.
Yeah.
And like even just thinking like how in like some weird, creepy, like Berlin club, there's like horrible designs of like VR reality that you could like engage in. Right. So, but the other thing I was thinking about of like, sort of like how we're all talking about like big flashy superhero movies is the future. So even just thinking of like, are we going to start going to movies and put on a VR mask like I did?
Oh God.
Because the
Please
thing
no.
that I will say about it and then walk around in a room like I was, in these different installations. Because the thing about it is, I don't know if that's storytelling anymore.
I kind of agree with you.
And
it just becomes immersion.
Well, so here's the barriers that are in the way of VR right now. Is number one, you have motion lag, which is when you move your head, there's a slight lag between the video moving and you moving. And if you think of VR, most of the VR experiences you've had have probably been CGI, right? Because filming live action footage, the only thing you can really do right now is take a single data point and be collecting everything that's coming into it, right?
Right.
Whereas true 3D, the experience of living life is that I can walk around objects and see the different angles of them as opposed to standing in one spot and just looking around me. So we'll have to develop technology that allows you to actually explore and change and interact with real footage in a way that is as dynamic as the real life. Because until then, you're just stuck at a finite point and everything around you can look at. But so that's why I don't think that's coming. But I do think this technology of 120 frames per second, 4K 3D is a step towards that. Because again, right now we are inhibited by the rectangle screen, but this technology proves the rectangle doesn't really matter when you have a high frame rate like this. So I do think there'll be interesting things. But I think this is a very early stage of something that will probably develop into something more reasonable and more useful to us. But this is the first step. It will be a long time before...
A long halftime walk.
It'll be a long halftime walk before it turns into anything that is more experiential.
I'm going to say this in the dumbest way possible, but what I find fascinating is all of these techniques and technological advancements, which are in the name of trying to... The notion they throw out is we want to greater reflect reality. Make what the image you see on screen feel more like how your eyes function, what the real world looks like to you.
Right.
When it's with live action elements, weirdly starts to have an uncanny valley effect because you're starting to notice how fake everything is.
Right.
And the CGI rendered elements always work better. You know, like this stuff works in video games, works in VR. I mean, if you were going to try to push the high frame rate thing just as its own thing, it would make more sense to do that with CGI animated films.
Right.
You know, to say like
100%.
Coco's being released on limited screens
Sure.
in 48 frames per second, and that might fucking work. That's kind of what could be the breakthrough for the technology, at least to get people to sample it.
But God, animators would kill you. Having to
They'd kill
animate
you.
120 frames per
Yeah,
second.
that seems
It
evil.
literally,
Right.
if you're doing 48, it doubles their workload.
Right.
You know, and I mean, it will. Yeah.
That's the thing. All this bullshit is a lot of bullshit, but at least it's like you are still just pointing a camera somewhere and turning
Yes.
it on. Like
Right.
it's not like animation where they can't just point a
Because
camera
like
at something
Pixar
and turn it
movies,
on.
which are state of the art, are still done in 2K. And there's been some questioning of like, why wouldn't you go to 4K? Live action films are in 4K now, and it's like because it literally
got a
would
question.
double our work and our budget.
But I would want
Uh-oh.
to, instead of watch a movie about robbing a bank, I want to rob a bank.
But you can and already have done that. You just buy a gun and rob a bank like you do.
Good time.
All right.
He's taking the fifth. Oh, weird. Okay.
Do you remember that time that Ben walked into a bank and said, "This is just good time VR,"
Well,
with a loaded shotgun?
what's wild about all this talk too is that the technology does not exist for 120 frames per second really yet.
Yeah.
Like Avid, which is the editing system everyone uses, it only released its sort of like beta version of 60 frames per second during Billy Lynn. So they had to by hand track and manage their media, like like an Excel file they had open to track to line up the frames, get everything to work, because it does not exist yet.
You're just telling me this, and I'm so stressed out because they made a bad movie. Like, it sucks to hear all this, and it'd be so great to hear all this, and you'd be like, and the fucking result is there. Like,
Right.
what a Titanic film!
That's the
like
thing I find
that will always be remembered.
so interesting about it as an
Yeah, it's
artifact.
interesting.
Is that if you were doing like a 5-minute short film, and when we walked out of this movie, we talked about it for a bit, and then we met up like 2 days later to talk about it for like another 3 hours,
Yes.
right? You and I just walked around
Yes.
and talked about it. And the big thing we were going into is, okay, there is potential in this thing. What kind of movie could you make with this? Like, you'd have to fully design it around the technology.
Yes.
And we were going, is it a film that only takes place in one location? Is it something where you have entirely non-professional actors? Is it a documentary? Is it this visual aesthetic? Is it this type of story? I mean, we're running through all these different possibilities, right? And if you were doing like, let's design a bunch of 5-minute short films,
Right.
testing out the different sort of genres, aesthetics, all these things that would work with it, whether, you know, we were saying, is it better if it's improvised? Because then you don't see people trying to memorize their lines.
Right.
If they're really reacting naturally in the moment, if they don't know what they're going to do, all that sort of stuff. To have to deal with this level of problem solving takes up so much mental energy and so much time that it just feels like you're watching this movie and there's like a fifth as much energy spent on the actual movie
Right.
as a storytelling device as there should be. And a big part of that is these shots are so difficult to set up that they said like it was like 2-3 takes maximum.
Yeah.
So dramatically, I finally hit it last night where I was like, this feels like a shittier Clint Eastwood movie.
Yes,
where he famously is like,
he's like,
I don't want to take too long in this. It's 2 setups. It's 3 takes. Either you're ready or you're not.
Right.
And sometimes it totally works. He's got Tom Hanks. It's a pro. And sometimes it's 15-17 to Paris. And you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Right. And it feels like abstract art.
But
and at the weirdest moments, this feels like abstract art, except performed by people who are very professional and experienced.
I'm watching this movie. I had seen it twice already, but I'm watching this movie with Joanna, and like the first 20 minutes, like, you know, the weirdness of it, I'm like, I do love that idea that he feels like the world is like feeling a little too real, and also that idea that like we lionize veterans and military people, and like he's trying to present them in total clarity and show you how like scared and shaken up they all are. And I'm like, I love this. And then 20 minutes in, or maybe 25, he's having that conversation with the cheerleader.
Yeah.
And they're like saying these like weird long monologues to each other about like how they really feel.
And you're just like, this is one of the least engaging scenes I have ever seen.
And
from 2 actors who I think are pretty good on their own.
Joanna's just like, this movie is fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Like, this is boring.
It
and
just
I'm like,
feels inert.
Yeah, I know. This is a bit of a rough scene. And then you realize like it just sort of like sinks into the muck. Like it can't pull itself out. It just doesn't have engaging pathos, like, you know what I mean? Apart from the halftime walk, which is pretty good.
And I've been in this scenario 1,000 times on set, but if a scene like this is just not really grabbing you, what you would do after 2 takes is go like, okay, let's throw it all out. So what would make this, maybe let's change the blocking. Let me give you a different direction. But it was kind of like they had to go with their first draft ideas of every single shot, at least in terms of performance.
And like there are scenes like the big Steve Martin speech scene where that's his scene, where like network scene where he's like
mostly delivered boys, in direct address
here's how
down
it really
the barrel.
Works. Like here's and he just kind of gives this like somewhat flat speech, and then you're kind of like, and then the movie moves on, and you're like, that was important. Was that important? Does that matter?
And
like,
especially for Ang Lee, a guy where it's like he just likes to sit on set in silence for an hour and a half to get a full understanding of the space. He likes to work with actors' body language, do breathing exercises. It's so precise about sort of the dramatic, you know, his technique in terms of that reserve.
Right.
And a lot of times that's whittling down from bigger performances to getting smaller and more nuanced things. And with this, it's like they just don't have the space to do anything other than what the first strike is.
That said, though,
oh boy, here it comes.
Well, here's what I want to say.
Okay.
And this is me not being a critic. You're a film critic.
Sure,
That's what you do professionally.
Right.
I'm just a fanboy of films. I'm JD Amato, and I love movies.
Blanket.
I don't like this film being categorized as a bad movie or a terrible movie. I think this is a really courageous thing.
I agree.
I think that it takes.
Yes,
I think it takes a lot of guts to go. We're going to be the first ones to use this technology.
Right.
I think it's a really novel idea.
It is. I like the idea.
The movie's like Fitzcarraldo. It's like the actual event,
like pushing a church up a hill or whatever. Right. Yeah.
Right. It like kind of doesn't matter like what happens when the boat gets to the other side of the mountain. Yeah. But the fact that they pulled it up the mountain is in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's like I think his instinct to go
Olive and Lucinda. What's the movie with the tree? It doesn't matter. Carry on.
Jesus Christ.
But his instinct to go, let's use this technology to make a film about a vet, like that all matches up. And of course, sure, it doesn't totally work out. And there's aspects of the story that don't totally line up. But I feel like when everyone's like, oh, it's a bad movie, it's a terrible movie, like, I disagree. I think this is, as people who love blank checks, we should be rallying behind this. Because
100%.
If blank checks need to be measured on whether they're perfect or not, then we're not going to get any more blank checks. We're going to get Marvel movies and Star Wars movies.
But the Marvel movies and Star Wars movies aren't perfect. They're just like, they're a guaranteed
That's what I'm saying. Right.
You know what I mean? Like, but they're just guaranteed to be pretty watchable.
That's exactly 100%.
You're saying he took the big swing. I'm saying he missed. Now, we both admire
which I
the
agree
swing.
With.
Right.
But I don't think that means it's a terrible film.
No, I'm saying, right, but he missed. So, like, that's bad.
I don't think it's a terrible film. I think it's not a good film.
Not a good film. Yeah, I gave it, like, it's like a 6 out of 10 for me. Yeah. It's just a weird thing to say about a movie like this because it's such a polarizing, bizarre movie. But it is kind of like a film where you're like, well, this doesn't really succeed, but it is so unusual that it's hard to hate it.
I will say 2 things about it. One, JD and I love this and largely agree with you on this, but I know you're a big proponent of the experience of making the movie should be as much a work as the movie itself.
I think that can be as valuable creatively.
Right.
Sure.
And this is like an ultimate example of that.
Yeah.
And certainly the process and the challenge of what they put themselves through is more interesting than the movie itself in this case. You wish there was a Burden of Dreams style documentary about the making of this film just so all of that could be documented. The tragic thing about it is the movie is essentially unwatchable to most people now.
Can we talk about the halftime walk, though?
Yes, in 1 second, because this is the second point I want to get to.
Okay.
But it's like most people can't see it the way it was intended. And because of the way it was intended, the version that does now exist for people to watch feels compromised and just doesn't really make sense.
Right.
Now, the thing about this movie for me, though, is I just always remember, because it's not a fancy wording, but it sticks in my head. Whoever it was at the New Yorker, I think it might have been Anthony Lane, when Spider-Man 3 came out, did his whole pan of Spider-Man 3, but said there's this one fucking sequence in the middle, the birth of the Sandman sequence, where for 5 minutes, there's nowhere else in the world you'd rather be. And I think about that sometimes with a movie that doesn't work, but you get the one sequence where it's like, this is what the director was trying to do, and for a brief window, it totally crystallizes. And for me, the actual walk itself is that. When I saw this in theaters with you at 120 frames, in 3D, in 4K for the walk, I went, I fucking get it, and this feels like a masterwork. This is brilliant. And it's insane how when you watch it not in that format, it doesn't totally work at all.
Can I that was my
but that
point
sequence,
is
I kept
this
feels
like,
experiential.
well, we're gonna get to the halftime walk. That's kind
Get
of
ready, the
like,
walk is great.
And then we watch it on my TV in like, crisp Blu-ray or 4K, but still, and I'm like, oh, yeah. No, I mean, that was good. Yeah, but like you forget, like it only really truly works in the proper.
And it did.
Yeah,
it feels like you're in his head for that sequence.
Right.
I mean, it was astonishing.
At the end again, the sort of the final montage he has during the fight. Although
some of the wartime sequences, him in the pipe with the guy in Vin Diesel, that I remember being very
excellent
striking.
Scene.
And even the shit
it's
like the pink mist,
staged.
I just remember being like, oh, this actually feels like what I imagine it would look like to be on the battlefield. It doesn't look like a movie version of war. This looks like actual violence.
But then there are scenes, like the scene where Billy Lynn in flashback is doing pull-ups, chin-ups, and Vin Diesel and Garrett Hedlund's characters are talking to him.
Yeah.
They're all standing nowhere near each other.
Right.
And they're having this kind of casual conversation, but it looks like a stage play or something, like the way they've all been arranged, and then none of them ever move.
Because it's for the sake of 3D.
Exactly. And you're just watching this and you're like, this is fucking stupid. Like, they're not people. Like, sorry, Ben. And it's, you lose the whatever human drama he's like built ahead of steam. Like, it just sort of like dissipates really fast.
Yeah, and there are even just like narrative issues, like the whole running thing with them getting in troubles with like the stagehands at the concert where they're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It varies, like where you're like, why are they yelling at them? Like, why are they being mean?
Well,
These
and it's
are
also
veterans.
Like, this is like a halftime show. There's like so much security. There's so much planned at this event. Destiny's Child is playing, and they're going like, so here's what you're going to do, and giving them the directions 30 seconds before they go onto the field.
You haven't worked this out before?
Stuff like that, where you just go like, it seems very uncharacteristic for Ang Lee to put that little thought into the internal logic of human situations.
Right, or the thing with the
behavior.
stage, where the techs get like so mad at them and then decide to fight them after the game.
That they're just waiting in the alleyway. They would never let that happen.
No one would ever think, like, let me attack these famous war veterans.
Especially
like, one, because it's shameful, two, because they'll kill you.
And also,
They're
the first half of the
murderers.
movie, they have Ben Platt with them constantly as their handler, guiding them through everything, and then he conveniently disappears for all the scenes where people are trying to fight them.
Right. And then, I'm just sorry. Like, this is the thing. All the tech, and then it's like when you just sort of dig into the movie, you're like, none of this holds water. It's so frustrating.
Right.
And I love the idea of, I mean, Iraq War movies are hard to make. We kind of talked about it on Hurt Locker, even though that's under, Middle East, War on Terror movies.
Yeah.
This is kind of almost there to a good Iraq War movie. Like, the ideas are good. The sort of like total fallacy, Bush era kind of like, America, like, we're still out there doing, like, I like that montage.
Watching this movie
of all
makes
the
me want to
people
read
talking
the book
to him.
so fucking hard.
The book's better.
Right.
Like, of all the people talking to him, where it cuts, like, to all the sort of, like, stock phrases we all remember.
Yes.
From that era. I think the combat scenes are good.
Yeah.
In conveying, like,
I think they're really good.
Just sort of the uselessness of it. I love that thing where the guy he murders, his hand, like, goes up for a second, like he's saying a prayer or something to himself, like, because he knows he's about to die, and then the red.
But it's fascinating. Like, as much as we say, like, it kind of pulls the curtain back on performances and lets you see the process, the moment when he's stabbing the guy in the tube, you feel like you see life leaving this guy's eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre.
Yes.
Because it feels more real than anything you've ever seen. And then the way the blood slowly trickles out, it no longer feels like a visual effect. It feels like, holy shit, this is what it looks like to watch someone die. Like, you feel like you're watching a snuff film for a moment.
Right.
And so there are these glimpses where it feels like the technology is totally lining up with the storytelling. They are largely the nonverbal moments.
Right.
You know, because I just think the script isn't there, and the dialogue scenes, the performances just aren't massaged enough. The dramatic sort of logic of the thing isn't totally figured out. But there are these moments that completely justify the film existing, as if it didn't already justify its own existence just from the bravery of the experiment, which in and of itself is just this amazing, like, we're going to the moon in 1918, you know? Like, we don't even know how to get to, like, Missouri yet, and you're going to the moon? Like, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
When you're just like, this will go down in the history book someday as something. Whether anyone ever figures out how to do this, it becomes this amazing, like, chapter in filmmaking history.
Which is, I think that's the important thing to me is I just don't want this film to be dismissed and forgotten, because I do think it is Ang Lee, John Toll, the whole crew that made
Vin
this.
Diesel.
Taking these pretty brave, courageous steps to try this thing. And we don't see a lot of big filmmakers spending a lot of money to take these big swings that may or may not work. It's like, to me, it's the epitome of what a blank check is. It's like, I'm gonna cash in all of my history as a filmmaker to do something that I think will at least push film ahead, even if it doesn't help me right now.
There's weirdly something kind of selfless about it in that regard, where it's like, I'm going to use my cachet to try to make the advancements that no one else can make.
JD changed my opinion today, okay? Because I like watching movies because I like stories, and I like kind of leaving my own reality and being absorbed.
Seeing people who have a home to live in.
But I will say that I've also always been like, fuck this Blu-ray bullshit. I don't care. I've never cared. I've never, ever
The
cared.
technological aspects, right?
Because I always was like, is it really that much of a difference? I always get SD.
It is also annoying that you always get SD.
I've never given a shit, ever.
I get it.
You watch VHS when possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I prefer it.
Yeah.
But you have opened my eyes to the idea of experiencing a film and being more immersed through the visual. And I was always just like, I care about the story, the characters, the dialogue. I'm not thinking about what it looks like, but it makes a difference.
And what perfect timing as we go into our Parent Trap episode.
Yeah. Well, I think it takes
crispest visuals of all.
It takes filmmakers appreciating and respecting the fact that they need to use it in an interesting way to make it worthwhile. A great example is like the early stereoscopic films of this modern generation. I really didn't like until.
What are we talking about here? What do we got?
I mean, whatever the first ones that come out in stereoscopic.
Like early, like I'm trying.
I guess like some of the Marvel movies did.
I mean, I'm trying to think Journey to the Center of the Earth. The Robert Rodriguez did the couple.
But the first one, and you called me and Griffin
stupid animation
nerds for this.
Coraline
was the first one where I felt
great movie.
That Henry Selick was respecting the medium and trying to do something interesting that was using it in a way that was engaging me as an audience. He did stuff where
I love how he uses 3D.
He had sets that were purposely really deep and sets that were used physical effects to make them really shallow, so that the 3D was really messing with your eyes.
And he's literally using depth as like a storytelling element, very consciously designed into like the body of the film rather than just being like, let's have things staggered in the image.
And that was the first time that I went, oh, this is actually an interesting tool to be used in film.
Yeah.
Similarly, where it's like, I have the same thing. It's like, I couldn't give a shit. Like, we were just talking about TVs before now, and I don't have a good TV or a good audio system. I don't care. I like the stories like you. But then when people start trying things that are interesting and are trying to push the format, that's when I have to like open my eyes and respect that, because that's when it's interesting again, is when Ang Lee is going, hey, let's try this thing and try to use it for art, not just to make the ticket $10 more expensive or to release it in another DVD version.
And I'll say a thing that I think I said on that episode. I will repeat, despite it making me look like an idiot because I wasn't as smart and ahead of the curve as you guys were at the time. But I remember walking out of Speed Racer with my sister. She said, what did you think? And I said, I don't even know, because what they're doing with the visual language is so different and beyond what anyone's doing that either this will totally make sense in 10 years or it will be this weird curio of someone trying something crazy.
Right.
And Speed Racer is an example where it's not like every movie looks like Speed Racer, but a lot of the elements of Speed Racer have seeped into our general sort of storytelling language, where that movie makes more sense now.
Yeah. It's true.
Speed Racer's great.
Speed Racer fucking rules.
Yes, it does.
It's wild.
How you guys doing?
I'm doing great.
Great.
Yeah.
We all just went quiet all of a sudden.
I know, it's just a lot to process.
I love you.
I love you too.
Hey,
That's
I love you guys.
That's the thing in the movie.
What?
Vin Diesel.
Yeah.
I love
you.
that.
I love you. I love that too. But it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
And then it happens again, and the movie's like you did before, and you're like, yeah, okay, I guess so.
I thought we were just having a nice moment on
No,
the podcast.
I do love
I'm
you,
a little
Griffin. I love you
disappointed
so
that you're
much.
just
But I
quoting
was just,
I just think male intimacy is like not a thing that really gets represented.
I'm a pretty intimate guy.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Well, now you're complaining.
Getting a little too intimate sometimes.
See, I feel like
you went 180 on male intimacy.
I was trying to catch you. Honey trap, baby.
I feel like my goal is. Oh no.
Go on, JD.
JD's
What's your goal?
pulling out another envelope.
What's it called? Shroom.
Yeah.
It is a
fuck?
weird.
Griffin will try to honey trap David.
He likes tripping.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, because he's all trippy. He's like spiritual, baby.
Wow,
God,
that was the most half-hearted baby.
I wish this was the best performance of all
You just
time.
want Vin Diesel to be so good in this movie,
know.
and you know what he is? Fine, yeah, pretty good. Not
in
doesn't have much to
120
do.
frames, I think he's actively bad.
Right,
You
but it's
see
just
behind all
kind
the
of-
smoke and mirrors. If you watch it in 24, you're like, he's okay.
Yeah,
He's okay.
I agree.
But yeah, it's very like watching it in the high frame rate. You were like, I see that Vin Diesel is like very consciously playing his best angles to the camera.
Well, so like here's a few of my favorite moments in the movie. One is there's a scene where they're in a limo, which to get the camera into the limo, they had to disassemble the camera, bring all the pieces in one by one, and then reassemble it in the limousine.
So it's like when you can't get your sofa through the door of your house or whatever. It's like the guy has to take your sofa.
Yes.
Dr. Sofa.
And this shot, when they like
came to my house
you
one
cut
time.
to inside the limo. This is when like 8 minutes into the movie, everyone in the theater takes their glasses off for a moment and like rubs their temples.
because you're seeing everyone in this limo, and they're all in focus, and then in the back corner, there's a window where you're seeing people tailgating, and they're all totally in focus. And normally you wouldn't see them.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be in focus. And there'd just be these blurry background actors. And instead you're like, that background actor is drinking a cup, but there's nothing in it.
Yeah.
Or
that guy's throwing a football to nobody.
It's
Like
the same
you're
thing-
noticing things that
the
you would
halftime
notice in
too.
reality.
When
you're
you're
like,
like, the
what
shot of them
fabric
on the
are
stage,
seats made out of?
where
you
you
know?
can see the whole stadium.
Yeah.
Like, what stadium was this shot at? Where?
Dallas.
So it was shot at like the stadium.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'm pretty certain.
That
yeah.
must have been like fucking so complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's also impossible to light a giant stadium
Yeah, that's what I'm
that.
saying.
Yeah.
It's like the worst environment.
Yeah.
Like,
And like half of this movie is them sitting in the stands, like them just sitting in the middle of the crowd, and you see everything behind them.
They CG'd some of the audience in.
I have
Which,
to imagine. they
imagine
said,
how hard that would be.
Nightmare.
120 frames per second,
Yeah.
where any error in reality is so noticeable.
Yeah.
God.
The fact that the book is supposedly so acidic and satirical, right?
yeah.
And it's the contrast between Billy Lynn, who's a man of few words, and his sort of internal monologue and calling out the hypocrisy of everything around him. The Garrett Hedlund character, who we've said is the character that comes off the best performance in the movie, doesn't exist in the book, if I'm not mistaken, and was created to have another character verbalize everything
Say
Billy Lynn
things,
was
right,
thinking.
right.
Which is also the reason why he's the only engaging character to walk, because
Right.
it feels like he's the character speaking honestly.
And it gets to a point where you're like, is there going to be a twist where like he's a ghost or something?
Right.
Because he's so
Because
forthright.
he's just like forthrightness, and Billy Lynn is just internalized like quiet, and you're like, well, this kind of hurts Billy Lynn that he like isn't
Billy
able to
Lynn
say
is
anything.
he just looks like a lamb. He's
Right.
just got those shimmering eyes. I think Joe Alwyn might be a good actor. Like I just saw
I
him in
think he
Operation
is.
Finale.
Yeah.
He's good in that. Like I feel like he's got promise. He
Yeah.
has a big year this year.
Yeah.
But I mean, he is mostly. It's a lot of face in this movie.
I just wonder if, especially with this technology, if the movie would honestly work better, more focused on close-ups of Joe Alwyn with voiceover over them.
Right.
You know,
That's
like
yeah.
that might work better if they literally just kept his internal monologue and you're just watching these close-ups and looking into his eyes
be
and all
weird.
of that. It might be weird, but also like this doesn't work.
Two other things I want to point
Yeah.
out before we stop talking about this movie and never talk about it again.
Yeah, here's the plot. They take a walk.
Never
Yeah.
stop talking about Billy Lynn's long
Two
halftime
things.
walk.
One,
What's an annual tradition?
his
Talking the Walk 2018. We're going to do it every year like the Blanky Awards.
definitely not. His
Blanky's beg
his
for it,
sister,
we'll do it.
his sister, Catherine.
Yes.
They play their scene together with this uncomfortable intimacy.
It feels like they want to fuck.
right, and
Yeah.
of course, part of the idea of Billy's character is that he's a virgin.
Right.
And that crazy thing where we literally send people off to die in
Right.
Iraq, and they've never had sex, but they can kill people, and
Which is one thing I think
Because they're,
Ang Lee
like, 18
does
years old.
really
Sure,
fucking
yeah,
well in
yeah.
this movie is casting really, really young looking actors for the whole squadron to kind of sell home the reality of like, oh, these are kids.
Arturo Castro from
has
Broad
a
City.
baby face.
Yeah, baby face. So that's weird. Two, that scene at the press conference where 2 times the screen grays out and they like say the real answer and then you hear them say the fake answer. And like, you can't do that twice and never again.
Yeah.
That can be a thematic device or you don't do it.
It also
don't
feels
do it
like
twice. It just seems
inelegant
weird.
technique. Like he wants to show
Incredibly
reality
inelegant.
versus fantasy, but doing it any other way would break the technology.
Yeah, so just fucking take that out.
Yeah.
It's basically
really
a masturbation joke.
I almost feel like this technology means you have to also follow like the Dogma 95 rules. Like,
Right.
Oh, like it's just there's a manifesto you have to subscribe to?
well, literally the Dogma rules where it's like no sets, no lighting.
Sure. Oh,
like,
I see.
Maybe
Right.
not all handheld, but like all the things, because anything that feels non-real.
Maybe you should have a podcast that watches every Dogma 95 movie and talks about all the rules that got broken.
There's only one though, right? Did Kevin Smith ever make a Dogma sequel?
Oh no.
That was 99, not 95.
Boo. Your
Wow.
IMDb Star Meter just went down. Oh my God. Wait, can I?
There are 35 Dogma
Can I
movies. That's
show-
a good little miniseries.
Can you what?
I found something that made me laugh really
JD
hard.
is wearing a blank check shirt, by
Yes,
the
he's
way.
a good boy.
Wait, can I borrow your computer for a second,
Oh,
David?
you fucking jerk. Why?
Because I have a segment I want to do now.
No.
Let him do it. All I do a merchandise spotlight.
Let me do a
damn it.
segment because I learned something recently and I think you guys will appreciate it. Wait, vamp while I get this
Don't
set
like
up.
getting my computer taken from me.
Merchandise spotlight. Football. Still America's favorite sport. Never done anything wrong. No controversies.
Is there any merchandise?
For this? No.
Maybe
I
you
would
could buy
love. What's the
score.
fictional team in the movie? Because they can't use.
I think they just say Dallas. I don't
Right,
think they
I don't
ever
think they ever
call them
say.
a name.
That would be a great piece of ephemera as like a fake
A fake jersey
Billy
or
Lynn
something.
jersey. Yeah.
Logging into IMDb Pro right now.
Wait, it's very funny.
Holy
You
shit.
can check my Star Meter or some
I
shit.
mean, if you stay logged in, I'll happily use your IMDb Pro account.
Sure, you can use it if you want.
Sure.
You know those like Temple Run, those like mobile games where you're like trying to run and collect all the things
course,
and not
yeah,
fall into
yeah,
pitfall.
yeah.
They should have made one of those that's like a halftime walk and you're just very
try to
slow.
make it all the way without being
Hey guys,
distressed.
Rachel tried to get Dan Vogler to be on the show.
Dan Fogler from like
Star of Taking Woodstock?
Yeah, his email is.
What are
Don't
you
say
doing?
his email
What?
aloud.
I won't say. I'll bleep it. It's.
What? Does she know him or something? Like,
Yeah,
is
she did a podcast with him. He has a podcast.
Wow.
Okay. Is he going to be on the show?
Maybe.
All right.
I'll say this. That is one of the better email addresses I've ever heard. Truly one of the better email
All right.
addresses I've ever
We're
heard.
ready. That was a good vamp. Good vamp.
Great vamp.
Ready for JD's
Okay,
segment.
here's a second. I noticed this the other day, and it really made me laugh. This is the IMDb Star Meter report with JD Amato.
Okay.
So IMDb has this thing called the Star Meter, which they randomly assign
A number.
a number to
rank.
someone.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like
It's not
right-
random. It's like how many times you've been searched, right? That kind of stuff.
I don't really know.
Popularity.
There's some
yeah,
algorithm,
right, yeah. So now you have to cut that out, too.
I know.
Yeah,
It's
thank
funny.
you.
Okay, Ben, bleep everything that's happened in the last 90 seconds. Just one straight long bleep, and it
So-
ends now.
IMDb has the Star Meter
Yeah,
where
yeah,
it
yeah.
ranks people.
Yeah.
Everyone that's on IMDb.
That is true.
Everyone.
But on the Star Meter page, it has 4 categories: the Star Meter,
Mhm.
how much they've moved up or down,
Mhm.
and then inexplicably it has age and height. And you can categorize.
It's
everyone-
not inexplicable. I can tell you why they have that, but carry on.
You can categorize everybody by both age and height.
Yes, it's
It's
for casting
casting
agents.
purposes.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand why you would have someone's age and height there.
Right.
But this is, you can rank everybody in IMDb based on their age or height.
Are you going to see other 29-year-old 5'6" actors and how
No.
I rank against
So
them?
he's gonna like find the
I want-
shortest and tallest actors.
I want to check in on, according to IMDb, who the youngest, the shortest, and the tallest actors
Okay,
are.
fine.
What about oldest?
Right now, Ronan Willingham is the youngest actor at age 0.
Well, that's no fun.
was he in?
0.
But
Give me
then
his credits.
Jackson Roloff from Little People Big World is up there at 1 year old, as is Aria Dixon, Fiona from the NBC Nightly News with Lester
we're
Holt.
cutting this.
What
We're
is
cutting this
No.
fucking segment.
But then here's the best part. Here's where it gets wild. You have height. So at half an inch,
You already read.
What, half an inch? What are you talking about? Is it a fucking sea monkey?
half an inch is a guy named Keon.
Impossible.
But here's the real kicker.
Clerical error.
He's
Here's
like
the thing that's so funny.
Caterpillar or something.
Who do you think the tallest? Who is the tallest actor according to IMDb?
fucking know.
The tallest actor in cinema history.
Groot.
Keiko the whale.
How tall? How tall?
At 24 feet. Which means to me, they're measuring Keiko's height as if Keiko were standing.
We're standing fin to nose. Yes.
Number 2 is Topsy the elephant. From
Sure.
the
Larger than life?
Operation Double Drop?
no, from
Trying to think of
from the
elephant
the film from the fucking like
Oh, the one that gets
1903.
electrocuted?
Yes.
The elephant that
Yes.
Einstein
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
But
Give me
Keiko
my
the whale.
laptop back. You already read a 5-page manifesto.
I'm gonna log out of my IMDb.
No. Let me use your IMDb Pro.
Why do you want it?
Because it's so useful for me.
Just
I
don't
can-
do anything weird for me.
No. It's just so I can see publicists' phone numbers. So
Yeah,
I can
okay.
say like, "Hey, I want to interview Topsy the elephant."
He's long dead, David.
I don't know.
How funny is it that Keiko the IMDb
Jesus
is like,
Christ.
here's who's hot and here's who's tall.
I want Topsy the elephant. That's his only credit, right?
Yes.
He was kind of one and done.
We're gonna play the box office.
Okay.
Keiko the whale. Why does IMDb have
Keiko the
that?
Whale had a few credits too, right? Like, I mean, there's at least 3 Free Willies.
I think he didn't
I
do
think
all the
Keiko
Free
did
Willies,
1 and
though.
2.
I think he did some, like, he might have been in, like, Mary-Kate and Ashley Mysteries at SeaWorld or
They
something
Jason
like that.
Bourne him, yeah.
They Jason Bourne. Yeah, you forget that Renner played Free Willy in the third
Yeah,
one.
Pierce Brosnan jumped in at a certain point.
Do we want to do the?
Keiko the whale.
I think the weekend it went wide.
It's one
Quote,
weekend
unquote.
later.
So then pick either weekend. I don't
I'm trying
care,
to see.
David.
Maybe don't get so fucking.
Look,
mad.
whichever one we don't do now, we'll save for Talk in the Walk 2019.
Oh wait, what? Ding dong.
Ding dong. Oh,
What?
Hey, kids. I'm back.
Oh my god. It's like one shitty blockbuster. All right,
You
look,
can actually do your.
we're doing the weekend it opens.
You can actually do.
Why is Ronald McDonald holding a paper SS Georgie? Okay, we're doing the weekend that it first came out.
I think Ben wanted to do an actual ad there.
It's okay.
No, we're not
it's
doing
a
an actual
marker.
ad.
No,
Oh,
it's
it
one
is.
for later, but it's fine.
Fine,
It doesn't
okay.
Here you go.
matter.
Ding dong. Now you can actually do it.
The movie.
Are you Orson Welles right now?
They help us escape our world with A-list actors, extravagant set pieces, and witty dialogue. But what record scratch about the music?
Oh, are you talking about the soundtrack show?
Yes.
The podcast that breaks down the music in your favorite movies while giving a bit of history around the film and its impact in today's pop culture?
And like the best French wines, it's hosted by David W. Collins, a veteran voice actor and composer with over 20 years of experience in entertainment.
But yeah, don't just call him a critic. He's an entertainment professional. He loves pop culture, and he reveals behind-the-scenes info on your favorite flicks and reveals how music makes them so memorable. So, like, you got, like, Spielberg didn't want Alan Silvestri to work on Back to the Future at first. And Silvestri spent most of the production winning him over.
Yeah, and like the best French wines, Princess Leia.
Oh, boy. We lost Griffin.
Yes, and like the best French wines, Princess Leia's theme in Star Wars is more romantic than the others, and that makes you care for her character as if she represents the good in the galaxy worth fighting for.
Yeah, and part of what makes the infamous shower scene in Psycho work is because the score makes you physically uncomfortable.
And like the best...
Look, you can listen to Soundtrack Show every Wednesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever else you get your podcasts, and you'll never listen to movies the same way again.
And like the best French wines, all of the music surrounding gameplay in Super Mario Brothers only lasts 5 minutes. Aha!
And we're back, kids.
Okay, box office. Remember, go to McDonald's, promo code blank, and say, hack my Mac.
Be quiet. Be quiet.
You gotta do it in person, though.
Billy Lynn's long halftime walk.
Don't use one of the kiosks. It's gotta be person-to-person communication.
It was in theaters. Billy Lynn's long
Yeah.
halftime walk was in theaters for 5 weeks
Toto.
total.
Yeah.
It was on 2 screens in its first week.
Mm-hmm.
It then expanded.
That was New York and LA.
Correct. It then expanded to 1,100 screens.
Uh-huh.
Was in those for the 2 minimum weeks, that are required by exhibitors, essentially.
Yeah.
Then lost all its screens, went to 75/16, and then vanished from theaters.
It's one of the biggest single weekend theater drops.
Vanished.
Yeah.
Do you know they released the film in 24 different versions?
I don't know what that means. What do you mean?
Between stereoscopic 3D,
sure.
2K, 4K.
Right.
Different 3D versions, like 24 different versions.
Billion. So opens
Found domestic totals $1.5 million.
$1.7 million.
Yeah, insane.
But it does make 30 worldwide.
Yeah.
The studio is estimated to have lost about $40 million.
Yeah.
But
outgrossed by 2 of the 3 Father's Knows Fast Trilogy
it's outgrossed
films,
by every Ang Lee movie except for Pushing Hands
and Ride with the Devil. Those are the only 2,
yes.
right, that never cracked $1 million.
Yes. So, number 1 on November 11th, 2016. I reviewed this film, by the way. You can read my review. It's not bad. It's on theatlantic.com. Number 1 is a Marvel movie.
Doctor Strange.
Yes. And so this is the weekend when Donald Trump has just been elected president.
Jesus.
It's a rough weekend.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
So this is second.
Pretty much.
This is second weekend of Doctor Strange.
Correct.
Right? So my mother and I were visiting my great aunt and uncle at a retirement home in Florida.
Sounds like a great place to be.
The weekend after Trump had been elected, and we were losing our minds, and we were like, let's walk to the closest movie theater and see Doctor Strange, which my mom has seen 0 previous Marvel movies. And she was like, they're all kind of the same,
first
right?
Marvel movie?
No, you know what? I think she saw, weirdly, I think the only 2 she had seen were Iron Man 2.
Okay.
And the Avengers.
Sure.
And she didn't like either of them. And then she saw this and was like, yeah, they're all kind of the same, aren't they?
Kind of are.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Doctor Strange in second weekend. Big hit. People underrate for a solo first Marvel film. That's maybe the biggest of the first, other than the first Iron Man.
I guess so. Mid-232. Pretty solid. Yeah. Good. It did well.
Yeah, because the other first entries usually do around 180.
And it's that weird thing where we're obviously going to get another one, but they won't say what the future movies in Marvel are right now because they don't want to, quote-unquote, spoil Avengers 4.
I think they knew, I guess, how big a part he'd be in Infinity War, so it wasn't as much of a priority.
I love that he uses the Crimson Bands of Citarac.
I mean, I like him. I think he's a cool guy.
It's a fun movie.
That's another movie that is actually infinitely better in 3D. That actually uses 3D.
I saw that movie in 3D
really
and it looked cool in 3D.
That's
the visual effects are really special.
Because they do a lot of portal, dimensional stuff like that. It uses depth in a very similar way to Coraline.
Number 2 is a film written and directed by past and future guest Richard Lawson.
Trolls. It is his Trolls.
Which in its second weekend has made $93 million.
And at that point had made $4 billion in merchandising.
Correct.
That was DreamWorks' attempt to do Cars and just be like, what's a thing we can put on everything and make
it was a film about how you couldn't stop the feeling.
I listened to that song unironically.
America was trying really hard.
That's a real J.D. Amato statement.
Is that a pump-up song for you, or is that a chill-down song for
you? During dark times, I'll sometimes listen to it to get into a good mood.
Cool. When you're trying to kickstart the feeling and it won't start.
Yeah.
Yeah. You use Can't Stop That Feeling to start it. Whatever. Okay. Number 3 at the box office.
It's a new film. New at the time. New at the time. I mean, this is a couple of years. One of the Best Picture nominees of this year.
Oh.
A great film. One of my favorites of 2016. And kind of a genuine and heartwarming hit for this kind of movie.
Yes. This was a surprising opening weekend for Arrival,
which made $100 million total, $200 million worldwide.
And I remember people hypothesizing at the time if the Trump election had helped boost the film with its message of struggling to communicate.
It's a great movie.
And now I think it's just it was a good movie. I don't think it had any political...
Probably. It's a great movie, though.
It is
Can
a great
I
film.
say something about the box office game that I just want to admit?
Mm-hmm.
Is that every time I listen to you do it, there's a part of me that thinks that you've cheated beforehand and that on the way here...
Right.
You
we talked it through or whatever.
No, just that Griffin has.
You think I've memorized it in advance. Yeah.
But I will say, anytime I'm here in person and I see you drawing from your memory, I can tell that it is real. And even if you did cheat, I wouldn't want to test it. I wouldn't want to know.
You're in the world of magic. You're wondering if I'm using some mentalist tricks or whatever. But you're saying at the very least I'm selling it well in person.
I'm saying to the listeners, there's a part of me that was skeptical.
Yeah.
I believe you're legit.
I do find we have that when people are in the studio.
Could you film it at 120 frames?
Yeah, then we'd figure out if I'm lying or not.
The truth teller.
Okay, number 4 at the box office.
It's a Christmas movie.
That's a Christmas.
Here's the tagline for it: 5 days together. Oh joy!
5 days together. Oh joy!
I definitely know that Joe Reed saw this movie in the theaters like within days of Trump's election.
Love the Coopers?
No.
That's a good guess, though.
Good guess.
That is a good guess. Is it ensemble picture like that, or is it like a star?
It's an
driven?
ensemble.
Does it have like a top liner? Does it have like a real major star? Or is it really just truly an ensemble picture?
It's a real ensemble picture. Yeah. You know, the cast is listed in alphabetical order on the poster. There's 11 names here.
Is it was it Almost Christmas?
Almost Christmas.
I get that confused with This Christmas.
I don't
There's
know
a lot
any of these
movies with these sort of generic bland titles.
Yeah, Almost Christmas.
It has Bad Zoo Boy in it though. Look,
Ben's
there he
favorite actor,
is.
Bad Zoo Boy, John Michael
And on the
Higgins.
poster, he's kind of going like,
No zoo for you.
You're a
he's
big
kind of got his arms crossed.
The Zoop Nazi.
John Michael Higgins fan.
Yeah, there they all are.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There they are.
Who is first? Is that an alphabetical?
Kimberly
billing?
Elise is first billed with her E.
Right. Yes.
And then you got Omar Epps, Danny Glover,
Yeah.
John Michael Higgins, Romany Malco,
And Monique?
Monique, Nicole Ari Parker. Yeah, there's a second line, baby.
Wow.
JB Smoove, Gabrielle Union, Jesse T. Usher, DC Youngfly.
DC Young.
I don't really know who that is. I know the rest of them.
Okay.
He is a American rapper, actor, comedian, and singer.
Well, hey, that's a lot of stuff. Number 5 at the box office?
You don't want me to talk more about Almost Christmas?
Because we haven't seen it.
I do like the dynamic between David sometimes being like, "Come on, let's get through it," and then
Well,
sometimes
then
you're
I'm
like,
like, you know what? I'm just going to settle in.
Sometimes he
Yeah,
really
this one.
sits in
"I
there.
like how this feels.
Yeah.
I like this chair."
Number 5 is another of the year's Best Picture nominees, and one of those Best Picture nominees that people will probably struggle to recall in future years.
Interesting.
And, you know, it's a movie that actually didn't do that well.
Interesting. This is its opening weekend, or is this a wide
No, it's
expansion?
been out for 2 weeks. I feel like you've never seen this movie. It's a genre you hate.
Oh, no, I have seen it because you kept on telling me to not see it. This also got a Best Director and Best Actor nomination.
Correct.
It is called, Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah.
I mean, it was sort of a hit. It made 67, but
Yeah.
like, I remember the buzz was kind of like a real comeback for Mel Gibson. It's like, well, it did fine. Like,
Yeah. It is insane that he got a Best Director nomination for that. That's
Crazy.
the most egregious
2
thing.
years ago.
Yep.
That's when that happened.
He's got to be done though.
No, he just made a movie about police brutality with
Yeah.
Vince Vaughn. He didn't direct it. He's just the star of it.
Yeah.
It's called Dragged Along Concrete.
Yeah, I wonder what the politics are on that one.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. We've got The Accountant, one of those like sleeper massive hits.
Yeah, huge.
Terrible
American
movie.
Accountant Fever. I never saw it.
Shut In.
What is Shut In?
It's the one where Naomi Watts is shut in
Jeez.
somewhere.
She's stuck.
Oliver Platt. I don't know. I
Wow.
never saw
Okay.
it. What else have we got here? We've got Boo and Medea Halloween.
Oh,
Jack Reacher
sorry,
Never
you
Go
just scared me
Back.
for a second.
You know, I just remember like so many of these movies, it was that thing where Trump had just gotten elected and you're just like, even like looking at a
Yeah.
poster for Boo and Medea Halloween, you're just like,
Everything's changed now.
yeah. Inferno.
Inferno. Geez.
There's an ad for Inferno on my Billy Lynn DVD.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, Ben Foster? And then I just skipped ahead.
Yeah.
I forgot he's in that.
Wait, it has like pre-roll DVDs, pre-roll ads.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
That's very 1990s.
Yeah.
Disney's usually the only one who still does that.
Oh, my
We're
God.
unlocking the vault.
Yeah.
And then the next week is Fantastic Beasts. But I picked the week before because fuck Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, okay, Beast.
More like,
I
yeah,
haven't seen any of
exactly.
those.
More like Fine Beasts. You haven't, well, there's only one.
Yeah.
Another one's coming this
So
year.
call
Well,
okay,
I li-
Beast, if you can be bothered.
I liked all the Harry Potter movies, and then I saw those, and I was like, I don't think they're going to scratch quite the same itch, so I'm just not going to
Nope.
do it.
Nope.
No, they don't. They
No,
don't
sir.
scratch. That's probably a great way to define what's wrong with those movies. They
Yeah.
don't really scratch that itch.
So then I was like, I'm just not going to do
It's-
it,
Yeah.
and I'll just have enjoyed the
Yeah.
Harry Potter
And
movies.
I've said this before, but like the color palette of that film is limestone.
It's
It's like
so
the strangest
boring
decision
looking.
ever
Right.
made.
Because it's
Yeah.
a very well-designed movie.
It's a well-designed movie with a lot of clever visual ideas,
Yeah.
but then also they're like, but every building should be white.
Looks really fucking boring.
Yeah.
When they pitched it, when it was like first announced, I was like, I like the idea of doing a Harry Potter movie that is not like living in the mythology.
Right, and
that
it is
just
not
like,
about the boy who lived. Like, that is not part of this like epic hero.
it's like
journey.
Gremlins or Small Soldiers. It's like he's got a suitcase and the things fall out and he's got to capture them all. You know, it's Harry Potter, Pokemon. And then the movie is so much about like Wizard Hitler.
It's so deep in the mythology.
Right.
That's
it's
the
like,
problem.
I bet you wonder what the other countries were like. And it's like, not really. I don't
like, what do they got? Wizards?
Right.
Well, yes, actually.
Wizard New York. And it like looks a lot like Wizard London. Very similar.
But Dan Fogler's there.
Dan Fogler.
Mr.
You have to bleep it out again.
David.
Dan Fogler probably is the best performance in that movie, right? That's like that's the most effective
Colin
character.
Farrell's very good.
Oh, yes.
Hey,
Yeah.
it's also an.
Oh,
You have to bleep that out too. Don't give many hints.
Maybe this will
Okay,
maybe
we're
this will be
done.
that'll
This is a legendary episode. I think this just
Yeah,
went
we're
to
going to have to do it
legendary.
again next year, same time next year.
Talking
Stop
the Walk.
setting that up.
Talking the Walk 2018.
Fans, that is not happening. I want to be clear.
At the end of every year's Talking the Walk, we plan next year's Talking the Walk.
Maybe it's like a premium episode, possibly.
Hold on, I'm emailing Joe Bowen right now to design our I Talked the Walk 2018 shirt.
No, what it's got to be now, it's got to be I Talked the Walk and it's got to be a pizza.
With every other
A
slice
spinning
missing.
pizza, yeah.
Oh, David, it's me, Griffin in the present tense. Thinking back on that episode we recorded a couple weeks ago.
A great episode.
Remember when we made the joke about the I Talk the Walk t-shirts?
Sure, it was an idle joke.
So
One of
funny.
our famed tangents.
No, I'm going to get deathly serious now. We made them,
God,
and they're
I'm
available
cold
right
right
now on TeePublic. You can wear a shirt that announces to everyone proudly that you talked the walk in 2018.
Why
and
is the wind howling so
you're
menacingly?
setting a standard. You're making a promise that you will continue to talk the walk every year and buy another t-shirt, and we'll all become billionaires.
There's a crow pecking at my eye.
Ben, get that crow away from your eye. You need to see.
Go to teepublic.com.
/stores
Buy
/blank-check.
your I Talk the Walk 2018 t-shirt because you're going to feel embarrassed if you don't get in the ground floor and you don't have a complete collection 10 years from
I mean,
now.
there's just one question. I mean, did you talk the walk or not?
Right.
Did you or didn't you?
And here's a parallel question. Are you a goddamn loser or not? Are you going to step up to the plate and own your life?
Oh, and there's another question. Ben, remember when this promo was going to be short?
My ears are bleeding.
And Ben, here's one more question. Who designed the t-shirt?
What?
Who designed the t-shirt, Ben?
My father, Robert.
And
Robert Haslett.
As if you need to hear anything else. So go buy your shirts now, you losers.
Did you know Ben's dad actually designed the t-shirt, guys?
That's truly no jokes.
He texted us the other day being like, my dad's designing a logo.
It's a family
he's
affair
laughing right
here,
now.
blank check.
I'm going to puke.
What if we
What if we end this episode? I agree.
What if we make good out of this and make an annual, this is not a joke, an annual Billy Lynn themed charity walk for Blankies? What if we like use it as like a force for good in the world? We weaponize our fan base and you do the annual Billy Lynn podcast walk to raise money for herniated discs and backs of actors closely.
Cut all that out, Ben. Just cut it out. Okay. Great.
I talked the walk 2018.
But I do
I
think
feel like JD comes into every episode where he's like, I'm going to coin a new fucking catchphrase for this show if I live to regret it.
Talking the Walk 2018 t-shirt as I Talk the Walk with a pizza with a couple of slices missing.
Spinning motion line.
I didn't do one of my patented sub podcasts this episode.
Oh, I guess not.
Oh, that's true.
You want to do one now?
Hey guys, JD Amato here, just jumping in for a quick second. I didn't actually have anything to say, but because I set it up in the episode, Ben said that I had to put something in. So I guess I'll just say this. If I got any of the tech or physics stuff wrong this episode, I'm sorry. I was trying my best. Also, I'm sorry we didn't really talk about the plot of the movie. Anyways, we'll do better next year, Talking the Walk 2019. Now back to the show.
And we're back.
Runtime,
just did
2
one right
hours, 24 minutes, people. Let's kill it.
And we didn't even go over the plot of the movie.
No, but
At all.
to be fair, when we bleep out Dan Fogler's email address, the episode will be 1 hour and 2 minutes.
Right, correct. That's true. It's a very long email address. I don't know how
It's
anyone ever
really
writes it.
long.
Has Rachel just been trying to type out the email address for weeks now?
From the moment they hired her.
Just finished.
Yeah.
Wait. Okay. Can I finish?
Yes.
here's the things I want to get off my chest.
He's getting the manifesto out again.
He's taking out a second
I just want to say,
it's leather bound.
I want to
unlocking it with a key.
I want to shout out a couple people.
It was just an eldritch scream that came out of that thing.
Some fantastic beasts are crawling out.
Yeah.
A niffler?
the table's turning to stone around it.
Go on. What's up?
Dimitri Portelli, the stereographer and 3D supervisor of the film,
Yeah.
needs a shout out. Ben Gervais, the production system supervisor. Those are the two dudes that did all the tech stuff for this film. And if you look up this, Sony has all these articles about how it went down. It was crazy.
3D is really good in this movie.
Yes. They used other facts that I want on the record. They used true motion shutters, which have the ability to have more than 360 degree shutter angle. Now that you understand a shutter, how crazy is that?
It doesn't really. I don't really get what that even means.
JD's manifesto is sucking neighboring objects into it like a portal.
It's on fire, but he can still touch it.
All right, that's most of all I want to say.
Wow, we finally did it. We got JD to be a little embarrassed.
JD, are you right if I scan that and make it a PDF available for people?
No,
Is that
I'm not.
It's proprietary. He's got to save something for next year.
okay?
No, you can't have it.
Wow. All right.
I'll bring in a manifesto, and whatever I get into in the podcast is what we get into it, and whatever we don't get into, it's for Talking the Walk 2019. And we get into it there.
It will be included in JD's archives that are donated to a university when he dies.
I'll try to hop into the Reddit. To try to answer some questions.
Sure.
I got called out. I went to watch you guys. David did
Discord. I went into the Discord to chat with fans.
And I was like, I'll watch David answer questions. And I didn't know how Discord worked. I used it for video games.
Sure. Yeah.
With like 3 friends. And so I went in and it was like, ding, JD Amato has arrived.
Everyone was like,
and I was like, no, I don't want this. Stop looking at me.
And I was like, what's up, JD? How you doing? How do you think the Bulls are going to do this year? You know, I tried to talk to you, and you were like, I'm just lurking.
And then the other night, I opened up Discord again to play video games with friends, and it had me automatically logged in. Right. And people were like, hey, and I was like, oh God.
Goodbye.
Yeah. But I lurk on that thing. I ran, after my last episode, someone that I was in the grade school performance of West Side Story.
Yes. They gave you a good review.
There's the first and only time I was ever in a play.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, Taylor.
Well, you've been in staged performances at the UCB and stuff. I guess that's not
like a play.
Yeah. You've never done.
Also, this is the one time I told you guys, someone on the street was like, oh, you're JD Amato from Blank Check. So this is now my home.
That's your title.
On the street?
Oh, it was a friend of a friend.
Okay. Still, though.
Yeah.
Shout out to you.
Well, thank you all for listening. Thank you for talking the walk. JD, thank you for being here. Congratulations on your entry into the 5-Timers Club.
Thank you. I also say, I don't need to, I'm not in competition with Emily or Richard. Those are people that should be on the podcast more than me. They're actual film critics with actual interesting takes.
Disagree.
Beyond getting into the technical stuff, I don't really have hot takes on stuff.
No, I get you. I get you.
I think
Here's what Emily,
wheelhouse.
you, Richard, you're actual critics who I read your reviews of things.
That's very nice, yes. No, but
Three of the
you
best
belong
things.
on the podcast as much as anyone else, you maniac.
Yeah. Stop being a maniac, you maniac.
I love movies. And I love this podcast. And I love you guys.
I love you too,
Love
JD.
you too, JD.
Blanket?
Thank you.
Blanket.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you for taking the walk.
Sure. Thank you for listening to the Ang Lee miniseries. Quite a long one.
Quite a long one. Next week, we begin the run of our March Madness champion, Nancy the Juggernaut. Later this week, a little bonus
Well, there's
episode.
that too, yes.
Ang Lee's The Hire. Or no, what was his called? Right? The Hire was the whole series? The BMW short series where they had like John Frankenheimer.
Chosen.
Chosen was his. The Hire was the larger series. We're going to do that, and include in that our final summation thoughts on Ang Lee. Thank you for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe. Go to blankiesirad.com for some real nerdy shit. Thanks to Ange Fergudo for our social media. Thanks to Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Lee Montgomery for our theme song. And as always, JD looks like he has something to say.
Nothing.
Really?
Don't forget to hack my Mac.
I got my quote I'm going to use.
All right.
You guys ready?
There's a quote?
I mean, here.
This movie has
Can
a
this
line
be
in it?
titled Talking the Walk 2018? as if to imply that every year we'll return.
You're so obsessed with breaking our format this week.
I think we should also.
I'm not saying we have to. I'd say we have to. It implies that we will.
What if we make T-shirts?
Talking the Walk 2018.
What if we make T-shirts that said "I talked the walk 2018" and it had like some like survived like like it was
like fireworks, like the poster.
Or it says, right? I talked the Walk 2018, and it's got the silhouette of fake Beyonce
adjusting her wig from behind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Put that all at the end of the episode. We'll see. We'll see what the response is. Sure.
This movie is so insane. Okay, are you ready?
It is insane.
It's the best.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. I will convince you by the end of this.
No, you won't.